All right, welcome back to episode 70 of the Hockey Cards Gongshow podcast. My name is Josh. Now, normally, I would say I'm here with Troy, as always, but I'm not here with Troy. Today, we have a special guest. It's very exciting for us. It is the first time in 70 episodes, or 70 plus, if you include the Hockey Cards 101, that Troy is not here. He is in New York City with his daughter, having some daddy-daughter time, so got to applaud that. We're letting him focus there, and in his place, in his stead, we have one of our favorites people and who supported us for a long time, and he's a frequent podcast contributor himself. It is not enough I'm going to call you Neil, if I'm going to call you Irish Flyers Collector or IFC. I'll probably call you any combination of the three until we settle. But welcome, Neil. Welcome to the Gong Show. We are really, really excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you very much, Josh. I really appreciate the opportunity and asking to help out and step in and be a part of the show. And it's really an honor and a privilege. I appreciate it.
So you are actually one of what I would say probably our longest supporters of our show, and had reached out to us going back to, I don't know, I should have looked it up, Neil, but maybe July or August. And so first, on behalf of Troy and myself, let me thank you for being kind of a true OG supporter of our show. And so, we want to obviously respect that. And that's a reason in of itself to have you on. But I think it's also worth noting that you're from the Philadelphia area. You love the Flyers. We'll get into that. But you also have some really good buddies in the sports card world, Cousin Oz and Cousin Tony, that have a pretty popular and growing podcast itself. It's Cousins Collectibles, right? That's the correct way to say it?
Yes, Cousins Collectibles. Yep.
Okay. Yep. And you've been on their show a number of times. And so you're a little bit comfortable with the whole element of doing a podcast, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that I own a microphone is pretty much because of them. Yeah. So having gone on their show a few times, and we get to have some fun and taking it to the next level with them as far as just the hobby contribution. And they came up with their brainchild, and I just kind of been riding along, and they dragged me back out of, it's like Godfather 2 or 3, just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. So they're responsible for me being back into the hobby and following podcasts, listening for shows, and reevaluating and just getting back into the hobby and collecting again and taking it to the next level for myself now that I'm an adult, not a kid collecting.
There you go.
Yeah.
And the one thing about the Cousins Collectibles is they cover lots of sports, but it seems like mainly basketball is probably the main thing, and a little bit of football and probably baseball, not so much hockey. So today is your opportunity to geek out in your passion in hockey cards.
Yeah, most definitely is. I always tell them they need more hockey in their lives, and when I get in there, I'll usually get my my hockey talk in just to get a couple things in there. So, but I love those guys, and I love you guys, and just talking the hobby, it's taken me to a different level. I mean, in the course of a year, where I've started back out again, and I never thought I'd be on their show, let alone another show talking the hobby. So it's been really fun.
Well, as you've seen over the past few days, we have a lot of stuff to cover today. And
Big
so
show.
We're going to go ahead and get rolling and start the show. Before I do that, though, I need to remind everybody that the Hockey Cards Gongshow podcast is a Patreon podcast. That means that we rely on supporters like you and Neil, who thankfully is a patron of the Hockey Cards Gongshow, and we express our gratitude for that. Really, your support helps us to cover our expenses and make this show possible, continue to produce more and hopefully better hockey card content, and fund initiatives even in a small way to grow the hobby. Right now, you can still join our out of 99 support level tier, and for $5 a month, support our show. You also get exclusive access to the Hockey Cards Gong Show Discord server, where you can chat with me, Troy, or Neil on a daily basis there. And it's super easy to do. All you have to do to support us is go to the hockeycardsgongshow.com website. There is a Become a Patron link there. You can go to the Patreon website, patreon.com, and search for Hockey Cards Gong Show. Or there's a link in the show description for whatever podcast app you're listening to us on. And finally, within our Instagram and TikTok, there is a link tree in our profile that has the link there. We have one new patron since our last episode, Nick's Hockey Cards. Nick actually has a YouTube channel called Card Crazy Show. Crazy is spelled with a K. So it's, again, Card Crazy Show that he does with his young boys. So please go to YouTube, give them a follow, and check out their show. All right, IFC, Neil, Irish Flyers Collector, are you ready with the game plan? Let's do this.
Yes, sir. So on today's show, we'll start by honoring the NHL's greatest player to wear the number 70. Next, it's time to see who's hot and who's on the struggle bus. Then we'll chat about the importance of creating a positive hobby experience and follow that up with trying to figure out what's going on with Beckett and why they can't stop shooting themselves in the foot. From there, we'll cover hobby news, new product releases, and end the show looking at some key hobby stats for the month of March.
Okay, so now you got the wheel for the greatest player to wear number 70. And when we had realized this is episode 70, you actually had guessed exactly who it would be.
Yes, yeah. I think it was pretty obvious, number 70. But so for hockey's most famous number 70, per the Hockey Writer's greatest player to wear each number article, is none other than Braden Holtby. He is a 33-year-old goalie from Saskatchewan. He was born in Lloydminster, but he was raised in Marshall. Holtby was drafted in the 4th round, 93rd overall in the 2008 entry draft by the Washington Capitals. I think everyone knows that. Yeah. Currently, Holtby is an unrestricted free agent. He had a lower body injury, making his playing this year very unlikely. However, he has not yet announced that he's retired, and he still may land somewhere next season. For his career, he's played in 513 regular season games over 12 seasons in the NHL. He started playing, I think, was most notably his 10 years with the Washington Capitals. This was followed by a 1-year stint with Vancouver and 1 year last season with Dallas. His awards and accomplishments. He is a 1-time Stanley Cup winner in 2018 with the Washington Capitals, a 1-time Vezina Award winner in 2015-16, 1-time Jennings Award winner in 2016-17. He was selected to 5 NHL All-Star games with 1-time NHL First All-Star team and 1-time NHL Second All-Star team. Braden has a career record of 299 wins, 143 losses, and 50 ties, with a 2.59 goals against average and a .915 save percentage. He also has 35 shutouts. So one of the things I thought was interesting there, Josh, was that seems likely with him at 299 wins, he's probably wants that 300th, so I think we'd see him back next season, hopefully.
Yeah, it would be tough to end one win short of kind of crossing a big milestone like that. So I would assume to some degree as a Flyers fan and being out there on the East Coast that you've seen a lot of Holtby watching Flyers games over the years, huh?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I see him. Usually, even if it's not a Flyers versus Capitals games, they were usually one of the ESPN games of the week, or pretty easy to see them. And oddly enough, there's a very large Capital fan base.
Okay.
Based off of but it's because of Hershey. The Hershey Bears are the farm team for the Capitals, so a lot of the players the players on that team end up in Washington, so people follow them. So. Jumping back here to Holtby's accomplishments, because they are many. He has made the playoffs in 8 of his 12 NHL seasons, compiling a stat line of 50 wins and 47 losses with a 2.13 goals against average and a .926 save percentage with 7 shutouts, all in 97 playoff games. The best season of his career was in 2015-16, where Holtby won the Vezina Trophy with a stat line of 48 wins and 9 losses and 7 ties, with a 220 goals against, .922 save percentage, and 3 shutouts in 66 games played.
That's a hell of a stat line.
Yes, it is. He has played in 3 straight seasons with 40-plus wins. That's during the 15-16 season, and he ended that season with 48 wins, which tied him with the one of the goalie goats, Marty Brodeur, for the most wins ever by a goalie during the regular season. During the mid-2010s, Holtby was one of the best goalies in the league. He fits the profile of being a workhorse goaltender. He had 3 straight seasons of playing 60-plus games, topping out at an amazing 73 games played during the 14-15 season. I'm not sure we're ever going to see a goalie play that many games again. 73 out of 82. I don't see that happening, but who knows?
Yeah, it's kind of like a pitcher throwing a complete game. It just doesn't seem like it'll ever happen in baseball again, and we're not with teams relying on 2 goalies pretty heavily and by and large splitting the time now.
Yep,
that
absolutely.
it seems like there would have to be a very unique situation for a goalie to play 73 games. I would agree.
Yeah, they'd have to have no options, I think, because I think in the health and longevity of the players, and especially goalies, is definitely something that's taking a importance nowadays. Let's see, Holtby, he was known for being a fiery goaltender and having a bit of a temper, which I think, as we all know, is something that our pal Troy likes seeing in his goalies. You know?
Oh, yeah.
He had the nickname of Holt Beast. Later in his career, Holtby has become very active around human rights issues, race issues, and equality issues. Now, as we get down to the fun facts, Troy's favorite fun facts. During the 17-18 season, Holtby became the second fastest goalie to get to 200 wins for his career, and he did this in 319 games played. However, since then, unfortunately, he was passed by Andrei Vasilevsky, who got his 200th win, one game less than Braden in 318 games. One game less. That seems very mean. It'll be the
You're
less.
not a Vazzy fan or a Lightning fan? Is this what I'm gathering from?
It's one game.
I hear you.
Stealing his thunder. I should note that the fastest goalie to get to 200 wins was Ken Dryden in 309 games. On November 30th, 21, Holtby got his 293rd win, which is the most by an NHL goalie in 500 total games. When he was traded to Vancouver, family move, packing the family truckster up, moving to Vancouver, Braden was stopped at the border by U.S. federal fish and wildlife agents due to missing paperwork that would allow the family's two pet tortoises, Honey and Maple, to cross over the border into Canada. Holtby stayed behind, and 2 days later got the final paperwork filled out and completed, and thankfully Holtby, Honey, and Maple were all happily reunited with the rest of the family over the other side of the border into Canada.
Okay, so I know you have a family. I have a family.
Yes.
If you're in a big family move, there's a lot of pressure, a lot of stress involved. You're crossing the border, and they say you can't go because of the turtles. If it's me, I got to be honest, I'm probably finding a river and saying goodbye to the turtles. Are you going to stay committed to the bit, Neil, and stick around for 2 days waiting for paperwork to get done?
Yeah, I can't imagine it comes down to that. I mean, could you imagine being in his shoes, like, being who he is and then going into Canada to move up there, and then it's like, wait, I'm getting turtles? Really?
Yeah, turtles is...
and then you're probably like, you're crossing everything else off the list of packing and moving and changing cities, and then it's turtles that holds things up. But yeah, I think it depends on how young his kids are.
I suppose.
I guess I'll finish up too with what, as I was looking over this stuff, I have a personal fun fact, but I don't want to steal Troy's shtick. I mean, I know he loves fun facts, so I'm going to add to myself an amusing anecdote.
I like it.
I feel a small bit of correlation to Holtby, which was kind of ironic when he was on this episode, because I actually used to see him play in the AHL with the Hershey Bears. It's kind of ironic that I'm here doing this segment on Braden Holtby. So one of the games that I remember going to was during the 2010 Calder Cup playoffs. The Bears ended up winning the AHL championship that year. They beat the Texas Stars. Back then, Braden was the Bears' backup at the time. Oddly enough, I mean, he is who he is, but he was the backup to Michael Neuwirth. But the playoff game that I saw Holtby play, they won versus the Sound Tigers, who I think are now the Bridgeport Islanders. I don't think they're the Sound Tigers anymore. So that's my little fun fact at the end there for you. As far as cards, his rookie cards, he has a 2009 Young Guns. His PSA 10 has a pop of 38 with a gem rate of 48%. The most recent sale was on eBay back in November, at the end of November 2022, for $168 US. And he also has a 2009 Young Guns BGS 9.5, has a pop of 79 with a gem rate of 67%. And the most recent sale for that was also on eBay in December, which sold for $51 US.
Great job, man. It is kind of interesting when you look back and you see how so much of the first part of his career is really defined by how quickly he won so many games, and then injuries hit some of these guys and things just kind of fizzle out. It seems like a little bit. So hopefully for him, he'll be able to get healthy and get back on track.
Yeah, even though he was a Capitals goalie, you kind of root for somebody trying to get that 300th. So I hope he gets picked up somewhere. I mean, he deserves it. Gets that 300th win, and then gets to do what he needs to do. And when he's ready to call it quits, hang up the skates and take off the pads, I guess.
All right, we want to make a quick PWCC mention. PWCC is a Gongshow partner and sponsor, and we'd first like to thank them for supporting our little show and really helping to make the Gongshow possible. Remember, their new weekly auction just started today and runs through Sunday night. There's just about 300 hockey cards available in this week's auction. As we always do on Thursday, Troy and I will pick out our favorites and detail them and learn a little bit about maybe some vintage players in the process. Also, noteworthy that Jeremy Lee and I will be back at it this Sunday night, again on Jeremy Lee's YouTube channel, Sports Card Live, to cover the end of the PWCC auction and all the hockey cards that are closing. That show starts at 8:30 Central, again on Jeremy's YouTube channel, Sports Card Live. Also noteworthy is that the April premiere auction begins on the 6th, so in a couple days here, and should have some cool hockey cards as they usually do in that. They're also making a change at PWCC this month and starting the process of breaking up the premiere auction into multiple auctions where they'll have a vintage auction. They're going to have a trading card game auction, so you won't have Pokemon cards ending the same time hockey cards or football cards do. And I think they're going to do a coin and paper money auction and a memorabilia and some other collectibles one too. So PWCC continues to grow in that regard. The normal sports card premiere auction, though, again, starts April 6th and runs through the 20th. Kind of will stick to the normal schedule. Okay, Neil, it's Monday show. Every Monday we go through Who's Hot and the Struggle Bus. And I'll get us going this week. And for the first time in Who's Hot, even though maybe you can make the argument that he should have been here earlier in the season, we're going to highlight Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. I think I'm going to like to call him RNH. Easier for me to say. He's definitely having a career year. The 29-year-old Edmonton forward in the past 2 weeks has 4 goals, 9 assists for 13 points, and 7 games played. On the season, it gets him to 35 goals, 62 assists for 97 points and 77 games played. So goals, assists, and points, all career highs for Nugent-Hopkins. His previous best season was in 2018-19, where he had 28 goals, 41 assists for 69 points. So already, almost 30 points ahead of his career best. That's a pretty good year. There's 5 games left in the year for the Oilers. He needs 3 lonely points. And if he can get that and eclipse the 100-point mark, Neil, he would be the 3rd Oiler this season behind McDavid and Draisaitl to cross the 300-point mark. Okay, so I'm a Wild fan. You're a Flyers fan.
Yeah.
We haven't been blessed in the last few years. Look great. Could you imagine on your team having 3 guys in a year with more than 100 points?
No, it's so totally foreign to me. I don't think I recall it. I mean, since the Penguins, wasn't it back in the 90s with Francis Lemieux and Yager maybe, but don't quote me on that. But yeah, that's just an amazing that for them to have 3 players over 100 and Nugent kind of coming into his own like that this year. I mean, he was a highly
talented.
Big
deal a long time ago. Never quite lived up to expectations, but is kind of maybe, at 29, which is a little bit old in the tooth, but he's definitely lived up to that this year. So when you're talking about teams that have players that score more than 100 points, I did find that the Oilers 3 times and the Bruins once, I believe, are the only teams to have 4 players score 100 points in one season. That's
just greedy. That's just greedy.
I know. Give me one. We had Kaprizov last year. It felt amazing.
Yeah.
The Kings in 1988-89 are the only team in NHL history to have 2 players with 150 plus points in the same year. Of course, the first one was Wayne Gretzky, and then Bernie, who had 168, and then Bernie Nichols with 150. Now that's just crazy. 2 guys with 150. Okay, so let's get back to Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. So if he gets to 100 points, he'll also only be the 6th player in NHL history to do it in his 12th season or later.
Wow.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
From a hockey cards perspective, Nugent-Hopkins, rookie, is a 2011 Young Gun. The PSA 10 is pop 229, so pretty small. It last sold for $205 US on March 29th. It is up about 14% in the last 3 months and 12% in the last 6 months. He's a guy that if they can make a little bit of a playoff run and he scores some goals and puts up some points, if you're in the investing flipping game, he might be one to think about over the next few weeks.
Yeah, with it being up that percentage like that, it's definitely reflective of his play. I mean, he's been criticized a little bit, or didn't get the hobby love that he should have, or that came with his reputation. But I think he's starting to see it now. And but at least the offensive lineup with the Oilers, with Kane and Draisaitl and McDavid, it's about time that Nuge stepped up, and jumped in and did his part. So I think it's good for him and good for the hobby.
All right, you got the next guy who's hot.
Yes, I've got. I'm going to go with Matt Boldy of your Minnesota Wild.
I like it.
Over the past 2 weeks, Boldy has definitely found a scoring touch. He's had 7 games in that time frame, and he has 10 goals, which is best in the NHL over that 2-week period. And I know this isn't a math show, as you like to say, and I don't even need the Gong Show supercomputer to figure this out. But Josh, that's better than 1 goal per game. He has 2 hat tricks over these past 2 weeks. But oddly, out of that 10 points, he has 10 goals. He has no assists. So I don't know. Does he not work and play well with others, it seems? Or
very selfish. No.
Selfish. Yeah, it's a greedy grabber. So
he's pretty good. I think he's much more of a goal scorer, but he's a playmaker too.
Boldy was the 12th pick in the 2019 draft. Prior to joining the NHL, coming to the NHL, he played for Boston University, and he was one of the 10 finalists for the Hobey Baker Award. In his rookie season last year, he had 15 goals and 24 assists for 39 points in 47 games. That's just under 0.8 points per game for him. This year, he's eclipsed his numbers. He has 29 goals and 29 assists for 58 points in 76 games. So while his numbers are up, but his points per game are down a tenth of a point there at 0.7 points per game. But a special note for him is he is almost at the 100 career points mark. He has 97 now with 6 games remaining. So very similar to Nugent Hopkins, and I don't want to say it out loud. I don't want to put it in the universe and jinx a player on your favorite team, but things are looking good for him to get that all-important career milestone as the season is winding down here. Boldy is, as I think most people know, is a 2022-23 Young Guns. And his PSA is a pop 200 with a 26% gem rate. Yikes. That last sold for $295 on March 31st, just a couple days ago. This has been one of the more chased and coveted Young Guns cards this season, regardless of his play. So he's actually doing a nice job rewarding collectors a little here at the tail end of this season.
It's been a good few weeks for him, I think, from both a Wild fan perspective, which is a small part of the hobby, as we know, but also I think for the hockey hobby, where one of the observations I've had, and I'd love to get your opinion on this too, Neil, is the crop of Young Guns that came out last November in Series 1 for 22-23, I think has some interesting players. There's definitely guys to like, but to this point, nobody has really lit the world on fire from that. And I think it's actually hurt Young Gun sales a little bit. Beniers is fine, but he has 21 goals, and that's not stupendous by any stretch. So I think for Boldy to step it up and to, I think, bring some excitement back to this Young Guns class has been a good thing for the hobby as well for the Wild.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you get caught up in the instantaneous reward and playing, and people want results right away. So it gets a little, I don't know how to put a word on it, but just you have some patience. And I think we forget that. But yeah, you're right. The rookie class the last year or two hasn't been like that ultra sexy look and putting up monstrous numbers. So it's nice to see Boldy stepping up here, kind of almost getting a point per game throughout the season and stepping it up.
Absolutely. Okay. The last guy who's hot this week is Jack Eichel, who started the year super hot and then cooled pretty quick for a good chunk of the middle part of the season. We actually had him on the struggle bus, I think once or twice this year. But Neil, he's heating up at the right time for the Golden Knights, right as we're on the doorstep of the playoffs here.
Right there.
In the last 7 games played, 4 goals, 7 assists, 11 points, bringing him to 27 goals, 35 assists, and 62 points in 63 games played. So just shade under a point per game guy. His best season was in 2018-19 when he had 28 goals, 54 assists for 82 points. Then he got the whole neck injury issue and was coming back from that and sort of fighting with his doctors and the Sabres doctors, and kind of had a not so great stretch for a couple years there. So I think the fact that if you're a Eichel fan or collector, the fact that he's played at least 63 games so far is definitely a step in the right direction for him. Again, he's been a little more uneven this season, maybe than you would like. But if they have a deep playoff run and he scores a little bit, I could see he still has that little bit of hype factor left, right? When he was coming in with McDavid, it was Eichel McDavid. That was the debate. Who's better? Well, we know definitely now, I think.
Who won that one?
Who won that one? But it's not like, sometimes I think of these scenarios like I always will go back to sort of the Peyton Manning, Ryan Leaf, right? Where there was the same type of argument. Now, it's totally unfair to call Eichel Ryan Leaf because he's had a much, much, much better career than that. But he definitely is the beta to McDavid being the alpha. I don't know. He's on a good team. Western Conference is wide open, and maybe they'll make a little bit of a run. His 2015 Young Guns and his PSA 10, which was popped 981. Again, that reflects some of that hype that he had coming into the league. Last sold for $200 on March 30th. It is down 41% over the past 6 months, which makes sense to me because he's struggled quite a bit.
Right.
But now has been up 23% in the last month. It's a sign to me, Neil, of a healthy market.
Right.
I want to see when players stink, it makes sense their cards go down. But if they turn it around and they start producing, then that should drive more interest in them. Looks like some collectors are hopping back on the train. Were you a big Eichel guy, or what have your thoughts been about him?
I knew I knew of the Sabres, and my brother-in-law's a Sabres fan, so I knew about him there, and I just would tease him about how he was a little underwhelming there. But if anybody can speak to players disagreeing with trainers and things like that, it's definitely me as a Flyers fan. I've seen that happen here, so I was kind of like, the second that started happening, I was like, uh-oh, there's the writing on the wall. He's not going to be there much longer, because it happened with my favorite player. So I'm glad to see, for his sake, that he got a fresh start somewhere. He's got his feet firmly planted on the ice, getting back scoring again and playing well. I mean, you want to see that for players sometimes. I don't think anybody wants to see somebody do poorly.
I think too that's one of the things that kind of unites collectors is I don't want to see anybody go down from a collection standpoint. As much as like Troy and I will rag on guys like Mo Sider and Alexi Lafreniere. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean I want their cards to go down and people to lose money, but on the same token, when they stink, or not that you didn't do, but when they don't play well, you got to call it out too. All right, sure. Well, there it is. There's the struggle bus. That happens in post production, Neil. So you would never know that it just doesn't. It doesn't just pull.
Where is it?
Where is the struggle bus? Up front? It is here. We have two guys on the struggle bus this week, so I'm going to hop on and the first guy I see is Josh Morrissey. Man, he was in Who's Hot, I think, at least once or twice this year. He's a 27-year-old Jets defenseman. Bit of a scoring drought lately, we'll call it. He has 0 points in his past 5 games played and only 2 points in the last 10 games. Still, though, Neil, having a career year with the Jets. 15 goals, 54 assists for 69 points in 73 games played. His previous career high was actually last season when he had 12 goals, 25 assists for 37 points. So he's had back-to-back career years. Like to see that. To go from 37 to 73 and counting in points, that's a pretty big step forward, I would call it. Been a little bit banged up, too. He's currently out day-to-day with an undisclosed injury, so probably pretty minor. Winnipeg also has a 2-point lead over Calgary Flames for the last wildcard spot in the Western Conference. So I guess there's a decent chance we'll get to see Morrissey play and get some maybe playoff time. If you're looking to buy in and sell in the playoffs, I would do it probably before round 1 starts if they make it, because I just can't see the Jets. And admittedly, I haven't watched a ton of them, but there's a lot of good teams in the Western Conference. So I'd be surprised if they went past round 1 if they make it. Would you?
I agree. I don't see them making a deep run, but that's just because the competition that's in that conference with them.
Morrissey is a 2016 Young Gun. His PSA 10 popped 64, pretty low. Last sold for 130 US on January 27th. You're not going to see a lot of sales in a card that has a pop of 64. So it's up a lot over the last 3 months, but the only maybe small reference point would be its sale prior to that was for $50. So it did jump from 50 to 130 from December to the end of January. So that's a heck of a jump
a nice jump
for a card there. All right. Okay. Who else is on the struggle bus, Neil?
Let's see here. If I'm looking down the aisles here, it looks like I see. Oh, there he is. There's Mr. Trevor Zegras sitting there.
Michigan goals on the struggle bus?
Yes, Mr. Michigan Cole is on the struggle bus. The 22-year-old Duck center has kept himself off the internet highlights these last couple of weeks. That's not good. Yikes.
Yeah.
In 6 games over the past 2 weeks, he has a whopping 1 point. It's a lonely assist in the past 6 games in 2 weeks. Z is almost exactly on pace with his best season. Last year, he had 23 goals and 38 assists for a total of 61 points in 75 games. This season, he's got 22 goals and 37 assists for 59 points, also in 75 games. So he's a couple points short of his best season last year. So it shows a couple things there. It shows good consistency, but I got to be honest, it's not quite showing the great growth you would expect from a guy like him. I'd hate to point this out, but his 59 points this season puts him in 81st place in scoring in the NHL this season. So I don't think they have 81st place medals in the NHL or ribbons. Like 81st does not, it just doesn't seem, it seems extremely low for such a high profile player, don't you think?
I do. And whether you like him or love him or hate him or don't like him, it doesn't matter. I think that for him to be successful is really important for the game of hockey. He's got that flair. He's got the personality, all the little, we were watching my 8-year-old nephew play AAA hockey, and one of his teammates this weekend scored a Michigan goal, which is crazy that an 8-year-old is doing this in a hockey game. And so I am really, really rooting for Trevor Zegras to be successful. And it's hard not to call this year a disappointment.
Yeah, I agree.
I think if he had 35 goals as opposed to we'll end up maybe 25 or something like that, that would have been a lot better.
Yeah. I mean, he's always been a bit of an enigma to me. Like, dare I say, like his market value, I don't think it quite matches his actual production. I just find that he, like you said, he is one of the most talented players in the league, and he's certainly exciting to watch with these ridiculous highlights. I mean, from the Michigan goal to the flipping the puck over the net from behind the goalie. It's exciting for the game. It's exciting for the sport. He is getting kids to watch and be interested. But is his value, I question if his value is based off of highlights and not consistent production and stepping up and taking the next step. And like we said before, I hope he gets there. I really want to see him get to that next point. So that's why I was also a little hesitant to ask the struggle bus driver to head on over for a stop in Anaheim, because Zegras has been on such a good pace ever since January. But I mean, you got to be honest, you got a rough patch is a rough patch, and he certainly hit it with just an assist in 2 weeks. As I was saying, I don't really anticipate this hurting his market value as much, which I'll share in a moment, but it's really never seemed to be a problem with him. I mean, he's been a decent player, but it really doesn't seem to affect him as much as it does some other players. For Anaheim, they are well out of the playoff picture. So as the season's winding down for them, I think it's like most teams in this position. They want to finish the season healthy, find a few positives to take away into the off season to prepare for next season. And speaking of the next season, the Ducks, they are certainly in the running for the Bedard lottery. They have the 3rd worst record currently in the league. I hate to make that a talking point, but with the Bedard lottery, but it's a reality. They could end up getting that top pick. Can you imagine if he ends up there with Zegras and McTavish, and they kind of start to meld together? I mean, I know he's not going to put them over the top, I don't think, but it certainly will shift the focus back to the team that they haven't had since they won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I think it would be, from a young, exciting team perspective, I think it would be pretty cool. I don't know enough about the ins and outs of the game to know if he could play with Bedard, given they're pretty tiny. You think you would have to have somebody with size on a line with them, but even mixing him up in the lineup would be exciting. Sure. The only thing I've been consistent about, and the only reason I wouldn't want Bedard to go to the Ducks, is the time zone thing. So you live in Pennsylvania. Yeah. When would you ever get to see Connor Bedard play hockey? Or when would your son ever get to see Connor Bedard play hockey? It's like the games. What time do the West Coast games start for you? Like 10 o'clock?
They would be like 10 p.m. Yeah, 10 p.m. for me.
That's crazy.
It's rough. And I agree. I'm not saying that I would want it to happen. I'm just saying, they're a reality more than say for me with my Flyers. I mean, I don't think they have a shot, but yeah, it would kind of just shift that focus, which hasn't been there since Gretzky in LA probably, but it's a focus for them. I mean, they could honestly end up with him, but I agree. I mean, having him on a West Coast team is going to be tough, but let me wrap this up with Zegras. So he is a 2021-22 Young Guns, and his PSA 10 popped 672 with a 29% gem rate. Last sold for 192 US just yesterday, which is up about 6% in the past month. So there's an opposite scenario where his production doesn't seem to reflect the hobby attention he gets, but he was so hot from January just consistently. I think that's why you see it up versus knee-jerk reaction to the last 2 weeks.
Well, I think another thing I'd point out here too, and the same thing goes for Boldy, who's hot, is looking at their gem rates, where we had Boldy at 26% and Zegras at 29%. And you've probably noticed in listening to the show that Troy and I have been, it's been tough for us to look at Young Guns as sort of like an investable collecting card, fine. But even then, you want to make a smart buy. Like we have all joked a lot about Troy spending $750 on a Kaprizov Young Guns and now it being worth $230. When you look at Boldy and Zegras at 26% and 29% respectively, to me, I think that's an investable card because that's, for every 4 that gets sent in for Boldy, 1's going to come back a gem, and for every 3 that gets sent in for Zegras, 1's going to come back a gem mint there. Bad for the short term, good for the long term.
It definitely takes the point to, looking at versus ripping it and finding it and hoping for it, investing in the PSA 10 if you really want one, but it really questions the value of that card.
Okay, so that's Who's Hot and Struggle Bus for this week. On Who's Hot, we had Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Matt Boldy, and Jack Eichel. And then in the Struggle Bus, Josh Morrissey from the Jets and Trevor Zegras of the Anaheim Ducks. Okay, we need to make a quick Slab Sharks mention. Want to remind you that the current weekly Slab Sharks eBay auction is live. All you got to do is go search for Slab Sharks eBay on Google or go to the slabsharks.com website and you can see a link to their auction. Always tons of cool hockey cards in their weekly auction, so be sure to go check it out. I was looking, Neil, a little bit this morning at their auction, and they've had so many, especially on the modern side, really cool cards. This week they have a Jason Robertson True RPA out of the Cup. There's a 2014 SP Authentic Andrei Vasilevsky Future Watch Auto PSA 10. Doesn't sound like your favorite goalie, but a lot of fans of him out there. Another young bright star, 2019 Black Diamond Jack Hughes Quad Diamond Relic Sapphire. So I don't know if you've seen these, but they're the black diamonds that are kind of all black and really cool. I really like that card. And then and this is pretty awesome. There's a huge booklet from the Cup. It's a 9-player signature booklet of kind of, and I think the checklist goes a little bit back to a couple years ago, but it's got Kaprizov, it's got Dylan Cousins, it's got Sorokin, Tim Stützle, it's got Lafreniere. So what a cool booklet to have all of their rookie autos essentially in one spot. And I'm guessing a card like that goes for a pretty big number.
That's an impressive card. And the nice thing about that one is it's not one of those ones with multiple players where it's got one of these things is not like the others result in the long run. Those are all good names. I mean, it's a nice looking card.
So again, remember the auction ends on Thursday night. You'll want to go to the Slab Sharks eBay auction and place your bids. Plus, if you're a Canadian card collector and want to move a card or a few and get some cash, we'd recommend looking into the Slab Sharks eBay consignment service. They make it easy to sell your cards on eBay by removing all the hassles in selling, like creating the listing, dealing with a whole bunch of buyer questions, getting payment in from the buyer, which is probably the biggest pain right now, and then shipping. They even make it easy to ship your cards to the U.S., which is a big hindrance for a lot of Canadian collectors in selling their cards, because I don't know if you've ever traded or sold with Canada. It's not easy or fun to go to the post office, or cheap to go to the post office and figure that part out. And so they make it real easy to do that. You can go to slabsharks.com again for more information on their consignment services. Now, this week with Neil being our special guest host, we've asked him to assimilate himself into a lot of Troy's role. And so far you've done a great job in doing that. But we also wanted to give you the opportunity to put your own little mark on the show and put a topic out there that means something to you. So again, I'm going to hand the conch back over to you. And you kind of came up with an idea that I think is great. And I'm excited to talk about with you about making the hobby, you make it for yourself, you make it for you, and to really have the best collecting experience. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Neil, and let you run with it.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So the topic that I want to discuss is a way to, find a way to keep making the hobby positive for yourself and make it fun, because let's face it, we do this stuff for fun. There are those who collect for financial gain and whatnot, but you're still enjoying it no matter what it is in the long run. It shouldn't be a grind, or it's challenging and you're worried about it too much. My hope is in the long run just to encourage listeners and anyone in the hobby to realize that also you can collect any way that you'd like. You make your own rules on how you collect. Figure out ways to make it just enjoyable for yourself. I mean, that's kind of been the key for me over the last year, is when I kind of got back in after my sabbatical. I want to encourage people to keep that at the forefront of their mind. It's easy to forget about it sometimes. I know I've been guilty of it myself. The ways that I found to do that is the first, and this is a perfect example of it, is connecting with others. It's kind of stinks to go through this hobby collecting on your own and not having someone to share your wins with, or to cry in your beer with sometime about any losses. I find that some people might be doing that, and it's just fun to get out there and connect with others. You want to seek feedback from some people, because sometimes somebody might help you, buddy might help you see something that you're not seeing, because you kind of get that FOMO, the fear of missing out sometimes. So they might help pull you back off a ledge or investing too hard into something. So whether it's like friends in your direct circle that you see every week, or your, next door neighbors, or in the same neighborhood, or you text with all the time, or it's connections you've made online in the hobby, I think that those are great examples of things that are important to do. The example for me to give you is that I got back into hockey cards now here in my late 40s. I even created an Instagram profile just for my collection. And to me, it was kind of ironic. It sounds like something like a 14, 15-year-old kid would do, is doing that, creating a profile, and didn't admit it to too many people that I went and did it, except for Tony and Oz, who knew and kind of encouraged me to do it. Doing that and sharing your collection, you don't have to have a ridiculous collection with all these high-end cards to do it. If it means something to you, it's worth sharing with the world. It's worth sharing with Instagram, or to put out there like, hey, this is mine, I love it, and it's kind of makes it fun. In addition to that, get out of your comfort zone. Hopefully, if you're lucky enough to have some card shows in your area, go to them. It's a cool place to see people. It can be intimidating the first time or so, but the one nice thing is I've gotten to meet some really cool people in the past year at 2 shows. I went out of my way to go to the National last year. Granted, it was in my backyard practically over in Atlantic City, but met some really great people through the hobby. And this is even a perfect example here. Sitting here with you today, Josh, that's an example of stepping out and meeting somebody else, reaching out to others. That's how I got to be talking with you guys over the last year. I mean, geez, what has been, I think you said earlier, July. I think it was actually before that. Like I found you guys I found you guys very early on looking for hockey card content, because my buddies at the Cousins, they weren't satisfying that hockey need that I had. So they encouraged me to look and find something. And that's when I stumbled across your show. And I literally think I came across you guys day one, episode 1. And yeah, and reached out to you guys after a few episodes, and I have to give credit to Oz. I kept telling them how much I enjoyed your show, and they said, reach out, say something to him. Tell him you enjoy it. And he goes, we enjoy hearing good feedback, and that somebody's enjoying it. That's the most rewarding thing for them. So I did. And here we are today, where it's, I'm sitting here on the show with you, and you just do that extra little effort to reach out to people makes it so much more fun. What do you think?
Oh, I totally agree. And I'm glad that you brought this topic up. And I think it's an important one. What I would think about is, to some degree, there's sort of, once you do kind of seek out other people and make connections, there's a pressure maybe that some might feel to, like you said, have the most valuable collection, or to collect in a certain way, or certain cards. People will throw things out there. Like a good example is last show of ours, where we were talking about favorite inserts, right? And where I give Troy a lot of credit is he likes the cheddar. It's not a popular opinion right now, right? And so for us it would be easier to come on and say stuff like, oh, cards like that are garbage and stupid, or whatever the prevailing sentiment might be, but he likes them.
Yeah.
And that should be all that matters in collecting. That part of your message really resonates with me. And then as you're talking about putting yourself out there and connecting with people. It was really foreign to us too. We've told the story a lot, but there was no plan for this podcast. It just happened. Mm-hmm. And it was terrifying to make that first episode. Neither of us can listen to it. Even today, it's hard to listen to ourselves in general, but we really took a leap and put ourselves out there. Not just doing the show, but then making a bunch of connections on social media. And the one thing I could say to anyone that might be hesitant to do that is the biggest surprise, given that it's largely done on the internet, to me about the hockey card hobby is how nice everyone is. We have come across very few not nice people.
That's endearing to hear. I mean, it's good in the internet society. I'm glad to hear that.
And if you put yourself out there and you're kind to people, and to me, it's reinforced the whole, like, what you put out, you get back in spades from the world. And so if you're positive, if you are happy for people when they get wins, then you're going to get a lot of that feedback coming back to you too. And so I really, again, resonate and appreciate you bringing this topic up, because it is something we probably don't talk about enough on our show.
Yeah, it's easy to lose sight of it sometimes. You like we talked about. You make the hobby, you make it whatever you want it to be. It's the great thing about this hobby is you can define what you want it to be. Collect what you want, whether it's base cards just from your favorite team, or if you're able to have the financial stability to chase the big whale cards out there, then by all means, that's great. But the one thing that I feel very adamantly about is there's no wrong way to collect if you're enjoying what you own. No matter what you get, make sure if the card drops to 0 that you're still going to enjoy it. I think that means you're doing it for the right reasons. I find that I get just as much enjoyment out of my base Flyers cards that I'm trading with people online, and that I enjoy. I like those mail days just as much if I'm getting like a Lindros auto in the mail. I really enjoy those days. So I find that keeps it exciting. No matter what the value is, it still means something to me.
I've made more money on cards where I wasn't trying to make money at all than on the ones I am trying to make money on. I'm sure that's consistent with a lot of people, but it's those instances when I found a card and I think, man, this card looks awesome. And I love this player, and it's only $25. What? That makes no sense. And then you go look back at comps and they're all terrible. You're like, well, forget it. I'm going to buy this card because I just love it. I think it's awesome. And then you see it pop up 2.5 years later for $600, and you're like, whoa, what happened here? As opposed to, and I'm definitely guilty of this, trying to outsmart the market, right? You just don't get those. You just don't seem to get those big wins. So it's collect what you love, collect what you think is awesome, and you'll be happy regardless.
Yeah, exactly. And the last thing I want to add is just don't get intimidated by others' collections, especially if they're high end. If something like a high end card is not in your wheelhouse, then that's okay. And I think sometimes it's easy to forget that. You don't have to own these rare cards to be a part of this hobby. You don't have to have all these PMGs or rare one-of-one shield autos, and it's not a requirement. It's you don't have to have those things to be a part of the hobby and to be a contributor and a valued member of the hobby. It's whatever you want to be. So it's great if you land one. I think it's celebrating those wins when somebody gets one. I'm excited for them. That's great for them. But if you don't, then that's okay too. You don't get hung up on what others are doing with these high-end cards, and don't get too caught up in card envy, and just you do you. And just make sure you have fun with it. I think that's really what this is all about. You're supposed to have fun, and that's what makes you a valued member, more so than having a high-end collection. I think that people can get caught up in that stuff sometimes, and it's just a nice reminder that I've had to check myself once or twice, but like, well, what am I doing? And I don't have anything great, especially when I started doing my Instagram account. But yeah, I've gotten more compliments on those, and it definitely is nice to hear that stuff.
100%. So again, great message. Really appreciate you bringing to the show. And like I said, we wanted to let you put your stamp, not just with your commentary and conversation, but bring a little bit of content to our show too. So I appreciate you doing the work and putting the time and thought into that.
Sure. Thanks for giving me the
Neil,
platform.
take a deep breath, collect yourself, because holy smokes.
Did anything happen in the last couple of days?
Yeah, anything happened in the last couple of days. So
I don't know. It's been kind of quiet.
I normally don't do this. I don't know if I ever have, but I titled this in our show notes, the Beckett Circus of Horrors. Is that a good way to... I was trying to think of ways that weren't like super mean, but also reflective of what the heck has happened in the past couple days for Beckett. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, in case anyone, which I'm sure very few people haven't heard, but I'm going to kind of run through very quickly sort of the sequence of events that has gotten us since Friday to here today. And then I'm sure we'll have plenty to try to sort out as far as one of our top 4 grading companies is concerned.
Yeah.
So right now is the Mint Collective, which is a big industry conference. It's the one where it's not, sometimes you have like the expo, which is much more of a card show. This is more of an industry conference, like where all the key players can hobnob. And typically at these things, you'll see companies release big announcements or unveil new features. And Beckett surely did that on Friday. They initiated a new grading scale where I think the idea was to have more Beckett 10s in the marketplace. But right now, a Beckett 10 is a pristine. It's a very exclusive and tough grade to get. So definitely hard to do there. And they changed their grading scale where if a card that has one subgrade and the rest 9.5s would be a Beckett 10 Gem Mint. And a current Gem Mint, even with all 9.5 subgrades, would be, I guess, lowered in grade to a Mint Plus. Theory, again, is any sort of like what's considered now a true Gem Plus, so has 3.5, a minimum of 3 9.5 subgrades and 110 would be considered a new Beckett 10. Then they changed it again on Saturday, and they even, if you've seen pictures, they sort of covered up one of the subgrades on their big kind of unveiling at their booth at the show to the point where it's all super confusing. I'm even getting confused trying to recount what happened, but the hobby kind of lost its mind. And somehow what they failed to consider is I saw a guy who posted something to the effect of, I've built a collection out of Beckett cards over the last 10, 15 years. And today I have like 117 Beckett 9.5 Gem Mints. Wow. If this change goes through, 104 of those will no longer be a Gem Mint.
Wow.
So it's the equivalent of having 117 PSA 10s and all of a sudden they're a 9.
Yeah.
And so the hobby loses its mind. And then at the late yesterday, Beckett comes back out and says, hold on, we're going to walk these changes back. We're going to take some time to reflect. So you have to give them a little bit of credit for not completely going off the rails, even though it seems like they've tried. There's so much to unpack here. It's almost hard to begin. The first one is kind of the ironic or maybe funny side of this, is that this change seemed so bizarre and so damaging to their most loyal customers. And because the Mint Collective coincides with April Fool's, which is yesterday, half the people thought it was a terrible April Fool's joke.
Myself included. I scrolled, I saw it. I'll be dead honest. I saw it. I thought of the day, I'm like, wait, that just sounds crazy. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. No, it's April Fool's. And I didn't even continue reading about it. Once I didn't even dive in to hit more to read information on it because I was that convinced that it was an April Fool's joke. But yeah, I was stunned then until we figured out it was actually this. Oh no, this is real.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing. And to try to push a change into the marketplace in order to gain a competitive advantage, I'm assuming over SGC and PSA, and to do that by literally destroying a good part of the collection of your most loyal collectors is so tone deaf and blind. It's hard to even conceive. Like, do you ever like picture your like the boardroom or the conference room where they're all sitting at a table and green lighting something like this, where everyone thinks that, yeah, this is a great idea, Todd. Yes. I totally think we should go ahead and do this. It's business is hard. So in my professional life, I do a lot of marketing consulting. I help a lot of small businesses that are getting off the ground. And it's super hard in any circumstance. But to keep damaging, it's like they're trying to put themselves out of business right now. The market isn't doing what this company has done over the last 6 months is mind blowing.
If I was in the conference room, I'd be like Tom Hanks in Big. I'd sheepishly raising my hand, going, "I don't get it."
That's a great.
Because like you can't. I sympathize with you because you can't verbally explain this to the audience over the podcast with the numbers, like with the 9, how many subgrades equal a 10 now, because you actually need that chart to look at because it's so confusing. And yeah, if it has an effect on value of cards, especially those 4 9.5 subgrades, like that's going to have a negative impact when you change its rating. I don't know if they had to have thought of that. They had to be so vested in how many years have they been around grading, and to all of a sudden kind of shift to what people complain about or gripe about, which the value of them. I mean, I guess it might be a scenario of one of those, be careful what you wish for, because you might just get it. And here they kind of offered what people were asking for, is to change the 10 values a little bit, or maybe have a few more 10s. But yeah, this is what happens when you get what you wish for. It seems you're a little bit of chaos, unfortunately, and they slide the scale of their rating for 10s.
The biggest, I think, observation that I would have of Beckett, and not just this whole situation, but going back to their endless pricing changes over the last few months, is that they're reacting, they're not acting strategically. And that's scary too. So if I'm going to trust the value of my collection with you, and you're just shooting from the hip, reacting to whatever comes lately, and not demonstrating that you have a long-term, solid, sensical plan to be a feature in the marketplace. And let's be frank, right? These grading companies are really, you could look at it as they're a value partner in the collector equation. Like, you're partnering with them on the value of, and again, we shouldn't always just collect for value, but heck, some of these cards have a lot of money, and I don't know what's going to happen to them, but all I can do is I think of my own situation, and I hate to say this because I'm not rooting against Beckett. I don't dislike them, but I'll ask this question to you first. Yeah. So let's say you want a OV Young Guns. Are you going to drop $2,200 on a Gem Mint BGS OV Young Guns that has 4 9.5 subgrades right now, when they just announced that that's no longer a Gem Mint?
Let's see. Let me think. No, that's a big no. And you'd have to wait for that value to drop if that's the case. But no, I wouldn't. If that's, there's just no way around that. Like, doesn't make sense for me, and I feel bad for those that have it. And I mean, I will have to say it was a little bit of when I first saw the news and the announcement, I was like, oh my goodness. And I started reading and understanding more, because I will self-admit, full disclosure, I am not a heavy grader, or, buying cards that are graded. I am kind of like the poor man's Troy for the episode. So, and I do find it confusing. So when I read into it in comments and started wrapping my head around what this meant, I was just amazed that they would do that to the hobby and kind of hurt some values. But then, what was it, 24 hours, 48 hours later, they did that backpedal a little bit. So I don't know if that was damage control or them listening to the feedback. I mean, they said in their initial announcement, they talked to many people in the hobby, but I don't know if they were ready for that kind of backlash that they received.
Well, it seems like walking it back was the only thing that they could do. It would have been horrible had they gone and executed like they had announced and then re-announced and changed and went back and forth. The thing, though, that continues to concern me is two things. I saw a number of posts yesterday from people around the hobby saying, Beckett, if you want to change your grading scale, do it like this. And they laid it all out, and it made a lot of sense. And it was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. It doesn't kill the value of the collections of your current customers. It allows you to compete perceptively with, a 10 is bigger than a 9.5. So the way our human brains work, we just automatically, it's like why people price things $29.95 versus $30. It's the same thing, but the way our brains interpret it is wholly different. So I understand that they realize that that's probably a bigger deal than they initially thought, and they want to perceptively be able to compete like that. But the question you have to ask yourself now is, okay, so they're going to kind of recoil, retreat, they're going to rethink, and then they said they're going to re-announce this. Who has faith that they're going to make a good, sound, reasonable decision moving forward when they've done nothing but over the past couple months at least demonstrate that they're not making sound, reasonable, strategic, thought out, smart, judgment.
Yeah, I think you asked that question. This is where you cue up the cricket sound effect, because who trusts them going forward? It's going to be tough. This is definitely a stumbling block as a business decision that they're going to have to plow their way through to reestablish and gain the faith and confidence of the hobby. Yeah, it's going to be tough to come through this. Yeah, just the business decision was where it concerned me. I was kind of shocked. I work for a big company, and being heavily involved in the business there, I would have advised against it myself. But it's difficult to come back from something where you have a little bit of such a public stumbling block like this, trip up. It's like their shoelaces are tied and they come walking out of the boardroom already and happy to make the decision and announcement. And oops, Lucy pulled the football out from Charlie.
And they're obviously faltering in the marketplace. Yesterday, GemRate released the grading report for March. And when you look at just sports cards, Neil, PSA graded 675,000 sports cards, SGC 110,000, BGS 32,000.
Wow. Maybe they had to have had that information heading into this.
Oh, sure. Yeah. They probably track it on a daily basis. And so I understand sort of their urgency to improve the situation, but you can't just react to things again. And so me being a consultant, if they hired me, and they won't, but to go in and say, okay, what would you do about this situation? First thing I would go in there is I would tell them, this isn't going to get fixed overnight. So stop trying.
Right.
You're only going to hurt yourself more and more. What you really need to do is retreat for long enough. Just run the business as status quo, and let's come up with a real plan, a long-term plan, a plan where the collector wins and sees more value in our service. And we're going to announce that plan in a careful and measured way where we can begin to regain trust and confidence in the collecting world that we know what we're doing. And I would tell whoever owns Beckett, if it's private or public, I have no idea. I would tell the owner, I would say, things aren't going to get better for a while. You guys have self-harmed yourself to a great degree where the cuts are deep and the wounds are going to be slow to heal. This is a 1 year, 2 year kind of where we have to demonstrate consistency in our ability to create value for our customer. Instead of, we can't just say, oh, we had a crappy month, let's change our pricing again.
Right.
And confuse people to death. Or let's try to rush out some grading scale that makes no sense and actually hurts your customer.
That's the big key right there, is when their scale that they announced had some negative effect on the customers, the collectors. That's the one thing that as a business you have to avoid it at all costs as much as possible. Find a way to give some make sure there's a reward, or at least a status quo. One of the rewards should be, so those that wanted to get reslabbed, I doubt they would do this, but some of those ones that where the value is changed, especially an increase, never a decrease, but especially the ones that increase, those should probably get reslabbed for free. You want to put that best foot forward. I don't know if they'll do it. I mean, that's a big thing to take on. But when you're making a change as massive as this for how long after they've been in business, they need to do some of those types of things to make a benefit, to get people bought in, to help them out. Otherwise, like, oh, that's great, my card's value just went up because, technically it's going to be a gem for them. But, oh, guess what? I got to pay for it too now. You've got to help people, nurture them along to give them a benefit and be there for them. When you're making a change that's this big for a company like them, you've got to help give them people a win in some regards to make that change and make it successful and get people to buy in.
Like I said, I'm not rooting against them because I know that it would do a lot of damage to the hobby and a lot of collectors and a lot of collections for them to fall flat on their face. But they really need to get we're a family show, so I'm not going to use the SH word, but they need to get their act together in a hurry. And they need to, I think the biggest thing is they need to realize that they've hurt themselves again to the point where there's no quick fix. That when you have eroded the confidence of your most loyal customers, you're not going to triple your business in the next couple of months. But if you can demonstrate over a period of time that you are making smart decisions, you're making the right investments, you're improving the service, the customer service, the value to your collectors, and you're truly partnering with them on the value of their collections. That'd be a great term for a I'm going to trademark that right now for any, we partner with you on the value of your collection.
There you go.
That there's a chance they can turn it around. And I'm also not a guy to say too that heads should roll. I've never even liked that, like coaches and, people losing their jobs is a very big thing, but they need to sort out their leadership because right now what they're proving is that their decision-making process is broken. And so whether it's with the same people or new people, they need to be having a bunch of internal discussions about how we are making decisions about our products and our, I don't even want to call it strategy because it's not, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. And I'm not a big Beckett guy either. I don't have a big collection that I have probably most PSA and SGC, but like I said, I want them to be successful. They've got
it's only good for the hobby. I don't have a ton of them. I mean, I don't have a ton of graded cards to begin with, but I've always kind of been partial to the way there's looked at the top. Like I like the subgrades. I think that's the whole reason they have that. I mean, it's the one thing that kind of helps give you at least some sort of an idea of what part of the cards are good and better than the others. So I've always liked the way that those look with the subgrades. So I hope they do. I hope they do well and can bounce back from this.
We'll see.
Yeah. Well, stay tuned, sports fans. Right?
Yeah. Well, hey, at the very least, it gives us a lot to talk about. But prefer to talk about probably other things. Okay, so we're going to roll into kind of a new segment idea that I had that I think is going to be kind of fun, Neil. And it's sort of, we're going to look at, I think it's 7 players and us each give our opinions on their hobby stock. And so this isn't tied to a particular card or a Young Guns or a graded card or anything like that. And there's really no strict criteria. I'll have my own opinion, but just curious from like your perspective, is this a guy you're buying, selling, or holding? However you want to, I just feel like the cards are going to go up in value or the player is going to be a lot better or it's the right time of year, the wrong time of year, that sort of thing. So again, not strict rules. It's just more of a gut kind of feeling and intuition that we have on these guys. So are you ready?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Okay, so the first guy, and I tried to pick really challenging ones, which I regretted after doing that because I don't know how this experience was for you, but I got myself like all tied up in knots over a couple of these guys where like at one point I was buying, and then I was selling, then I was holding, then I was back to selling, then I went back to buying, and I rewrote this a number of times for each of these guys, but we'll see if I even agree with where I was a day or two ago. But we're going to start with, so I think they're all kind of tough, but Alexi Lafreniere.
Yeah.
So I have him as a hold, and I've been super consistent about really not being on board with Laffy, and so maybe some might assume I'd be a sell on him. But there are some signs, I guess, that things are starting to click with him, and that there could be, I guess, some opportunity. I'll start with the bad, though. In 3 seasons in the league, this is his 3rd season. He currently has 15 goals and was at 19 last year. So he's going backwards from a goal perspective. And as we know, the hobby is driven by goal scorers. Great hockey players, overall hockey players don't always translate to high hobby value. So if you're going to be buying stock in Lafreniere, you want to see him progressing in how he's scoring goals and not moving backwards. On the good side, though, from a point production standpoint, he's got a career high already, 36 points in 73 games played, about a half a point per game, and he finished with 31 points last year. So he is making a small step in the right direction from point production. Just as I've kind of casually observed Lafreniere over the past year and a half, it seems like he goes really hot and cold. Like he won't get a point for 12 games, and then he'll have a nice stretch where he'll be like a 1.5 point per game guy for 7-8 games in a row. So it's really developing that consistently. And if I'm going to be a buyer in Lafreniere, I'm kind of waiting for the market to totally bottom out on him. I don't know if it'll ever happen based on the hype he had, but if his Young Guns gets down like below $80 or something like that, I might go in and, just the gambler in me, snatch a few. And if he ever does kind of turn it around or things click, then you could maybe make some money there. But what do you think on Lafreniere? Do you buy, sell, or hold?
We are living in an echo chamber there because I'm also a hold on Laffy. As you mentioned, he is finishing his 3rd season, But I think the one thing that people tend to forget, he's 21 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, up until this season, the guy couldn't even go to a bar, right? So, I mean, he's 21. So I think he suffered a little bit, and it's just going to probably be cliche, from going to the bright lights of the Big Apple. And that's a lot of pressure and high expectations there. I mean, that's a massive fan base. I know it well. It's, the Flyers and Rangers, very, very storied rivalry, but that's a massive fan base, and the media attention there. I mean, that's a lot for a teenage kid. I mean, he was a kid to take that on, going into that, stepping into that role. So I think that had a factor. And as far as the Rangers, they're bringing in players. They just brought on Patrick Kane, and to help push them, to be cup contenders. They were very close last year, and that should have a positive impact on a guy like Laffy. When you get guys like Patrick Kane coming into your locker room, helping out, I think that can only help him. I see that having zero negative effect. And unfortunately for me as a Flyers fan, I see the Rangers are a team on the upswings, as early as, last season. They've got other players that are being relied upon in that locker room instead of Laffy. So as that attention kind of comes off of him that he had so early on, I think that's going to help him kind of like marinate in the background and just allow him to have the comfortability to use the next 3 seasons for him to get the game to start to click for him. Because again, not to go back to age, but he's 21. We're seeing guys, who were we just talking about earlier in the episode? You've got Nugent Hopkins is 29, and he's just hit big. Other players were 25. I mean, he's still got plenty of time to have the game click and become what I think most people hope for him. Well, everybody except for me, but that's selfish.
Guy that's observed them, as a competitor to your team.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I've been sort of thinking about when it comes to, especially Lafreniere, but really the whole kid line, was that a mistake to put 3 teenagers on a line, as opposed to maybe putting Lafreniere with Panarin or a veteran that can be out there on the ice with them and model the game? And instead you put these kids out there together on a line and sort of throw them out there on the ice, where really all 3 of them have not lived up to expectations. And I don't follow the Rangers on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't seem like that they've mixed them up a bunch, or that they've tried to really mentor, on-ice mentorship, and put them with better caliber of players. It's just, they've just sat there and waited for the game to click for 2.5 years now. For all 3 years.
I'll be honest, it's kind of felt like gimmicky, having the kid line, like a media gimmick or the headline gimmick, like it's felt that way. Trust me, I get why they're trying to get those players. And sometimes maybe the coaches are seeing something in a few situations that we're not seeing in practices, or something where maybe something's not working with some of the other guys. And you certainly don't want to hurt that value of your 1 or 2 line, the top 2 lines, or if something's not working right. So you kind of keep those guys all together as the kids. But at some point it's going to have to work, because you got opportunity to play, like you said, with Panarin and Mika. Like, that's definitely got to help them. And now that when you're adding more players like Kane, all of a sudden there's another player to go in the top, and maybe somebody can come and play with the guys like Lafreniere and Kakko. So that'll help them. I think it's going to be much to my dismay, but I think as far as the hobby goes, I think it's a hold. Like I said, I'm going to hold, and I think I am holding, to be quite honest.
All right, so Lafreniere, we both has a hold. The next guy is another tough one for me, and I don't know, maybe not for you, but I actually haven't looked ahead, so I'm kind of excited to see what you have to say. But I put Tage Thompson on there, and he's been one of the kind of the breakouts that he has been. Him and J-Rob are probably the big breakout stars this season from a hobby perspective, at least. He's a huge, exciting, goal-scoring, fun guy to watch. Much has been made about him being kind of 25 and having his breakout. Maybe there's the Lafreniere scenario that you were just talking about, Neil, right? Whereas Lafreniere's only 21. I think the other things that are on the positive for Tage Thompson is he is the guy on the Sabres, undoubtedly. And so as we've talked like about the Draisaitl effect or the Mitch Marner effect or Mikko Rantanen or some of these other, when you're in the shadow of the star of the team, it's hard to stand out from a hobby perspective. The thing that, and maybe I'm putting too much stock into this, that has given me pause on Thompson was going back to we kind of came up with our Gong Show rules. And one of them is to look into the pedigree. And you go back to this guy being a teenager and he's never been a big goal scorer. And so there's a part of me that says, so at 25, you just figure out how to score goals. And that might be the answer.
It could be.
But when you're talking about, am I going to throw a bunch of money into a player and cards, to me, that gives me a little bit of a pause. And so because of that, from a Tage Thompson perspective, and again, these are so hard for me. I found myself doing qualifiers on I can't just say buy, sell, hold. I'm a buyer, but I'm a smart buyer. I'm not going all in. I'm not pushing my chips in and getting every rare Tage Thompson card I can find. If I can find one that's a good deal, that is the right card and has rarity, I think I'm definitely a buyer in that case, but I'm not throwing caution to the wind. So where did you land on Tage Thompson?
I guess you would throw me in the buying category, but I mean, I guess I should kind of clarify and full disclosure again. I'm not buying. I bought, which was a little out of my. I bought this season just a couple weeks ago. I picked up his young gun at a card show earlier this month, so essentially putting my money where my mouth is on this one. So, like you were talking about, he is 25. He's going to be 26 in October. I had to look that up, but he's improved his numbers for 2 years in a row now, and that shows again one of the Gong Show rules or bylaws that you want to see the consistency and growth. Yep. So I think he's proved that last year was not a fluke. Like you said, he went from having like literally irrelevant stats for 3 seasons. They were that bad, and he just blew the doors off of that with 30 goals and 68 points last season. I mean, he went from like in the teens to having 68 points. And then, people might be like, that's a fluke, but he picked up right where he left off, and he went past those career best stats, and he's now like 44 goals. So he already beat 40. He's over the 40 goal mark, 45 assists for 89 points. So at 89 points, he's already finishing this season at better than a point per game. And he's still got 7 games left. That opportunity for him to hit 100, it's still 11 points, but it's there. It's, within reach, and that might just motivate him enough. So the other factor, like you talked about, I think it was earlier today, was the Sabres. They're a young team. They've got a lot of young, talented prospect players. And I just think that they're going to keep feeding off of each other and growing together. When you get peaking at the right time is definitely going to be a benefit for a guy like Thompson when you got Cousins there and Dahlin. So those players are all, I think it's feeding off of one another is going to be key for them.
He passes the eye test too to me. There's looking at box scores and evaluating stats and kind of geeking out on the numbers. But when you watch him play, he's been dominant this year. Yeah. He's so big, and it doesn't surprise you that he's having the success. It does make you think, well, where was this guy?
Yeah. I agree. I was just watching him. I just watched him yesterday. They played my guys yesterday, and he was definitely somebody that I was paying attention to on the ice. Especially not just because of this segment. It really made me like, all right, let me watch him sit back and see what's going on here. So yeah, he did pass the eye test. He actually performed and looked better on the ice than I could get from reading and just looking up the stat boxes. Okay, the next guy we want to look at is my guy Kirill Kaprizov. This is one I went back and forth. I literally rewrote this 3 times. I wonder why. And well, number one, it's hard to separate my pure love and. Like I've said before, I would adopt him. I would make him peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and drive him to practice every day. That's how starved we've been here in Minnesota for a star player. Yeah. So I'm in the buying mode, which I guess isn't super shocking. Mm-hmm. But, in fairness and conversation, I do worry about sort of the long-term hobby effect of given his age, the whole Russian thing. He came into the league at 24. So we talk about Lafreniere's 21. Well, it's 3 years to get to the age where Kaprizov came in the league. But almost since the minute he first laced up his skates for the Wild, he's been the best player on the team. He's been amazing. He's super consistent. He's hardworking, strong. I don't know how much you've actually got to see him play, but I tell this story a lot, but Troy and I, for many years, our families had season tickets for the Wild before our kids got so busy in sports, we could never go to games. Anymore. And we would be at the game a lot, and Wild would be playing the Blackhawks, and Patrick Kane would have the puck on his stick, and you're just terrified because something bad's going to happen here. We never had that guy until Kaprizov. And I imagine when people are
fans of other teams and their teams playing against the Wild, that you have that same sort of feeling against a guy like Kaprizov, where if he's like doing his like tomahawk skate in the offensive zone, where you're like, oh no, this isn't good. Something bad's going to happen here.
Wrap in, hold on, here he comes, look out. Yeah, he's not. He does give you that feeling.
He's just so dynamic. Will he be able to put up huge numbers over a career, given where he started? I don't know. But what I do know is that he is everything to this team. And in his absence, since he's been injured, the team has stepped it up, which I think could coincide. In a weird way, Troy and I have talked about this as Wild fans, that the team almost needed him to get injured because, Neil, it's like they were all sitting, like Baboldi and everyone else, like watching the guy play for months. The team did nothing. He was, I think for the 2.5 months or so before he got hurt, he was 48% of their goals. He accounted for the entire team's goals. It's not a good situation. So now maybe the team has woken up a little bit. He's coming back. He'll be back hopefully before the playoffs. I've heard he's starting to skate. If they can do something and they've got really good goaltending and get by a couple teams in the playoffs, he actually might be a buy, just not his young guns. Don't buy his young gun PSA 10 expecting to make money, because it's going up the pop count every month by 100 or 2. But yeah, so I would, for me, he's in the buy category, but I might just be a delusional Wild fan. So I'll get your perspective.
Yeah, so I'm buying too, but I'm not buying Troy's. I'm just gonna put it out there. So when he listens, don't get his hopes up for him to hear me saying I'm buying, because I actually already have one. But so I'm buying, but I think I've shared this story with you, offline over the months, is that I bought one box of Upper Deck 2020-21 looking for his young guns, and just so happened that I got it in that box. It was dumb luck. So I stopped buying the boxes. I was given one as a gift, and I sent it off for grading, and I got a PSA 9. So Troy can't get mad at me for having adding to the 10 count. But I'm buying the drastic dip in his young guns. I mean, it's hard to explain, but it's also not. I think maybe what you don't realize being in Minnesota, outside of Minnesota, maybe the casual fan, they just see the stats and hear about his young guns and he's the next guy. Casual fans just get excited and buying him up as a rookie. Maybe the casual fan didn't realize that he was 24. Yeah. I think that was a fact for me. I didn't know he was 24 when he came into the league, because he's still got a young, youthful young face. I mean, he's doing well. You just naturally think a young gun and a rookie is, early 20s. And gosh, I feel bad for saying a kid 24 years old is old or seemed that way, but it still was a factor. So I think a lot of people learned that about him.
Think of this. He was drafted in the same draft as Connor McDavid.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. And it just took that long to get over here.
Yeah. So I definitely understand where you're coming from that perspective.
Yep. And with that pop count being so high, I mean, it's such a running plot line with the show, and it's now third most all time. Is that correct? But that pop count hasn't affected McDavid's. And now I don't want to be misquoted to say that he is not McDavid, right? There's a reason why McDavid his cards are so valuable with his young guns, and I get that, but he's the number one. So with Kirill's having his so far up there, it hasn't affected with Connor. So I think people get a little hung up on that sometimes. He's an exciting player, and he's new to the league. And I think it's just this poor timing of when more people got back into the hobby after 2020 with the pandemic and shifting back into the sport. It's kind of created, which I know it's almost taboo, but people, I know I talk about my friends where we're entering like the junk slab era, where there's just this overwhelming population. And I think that's just going to have to be a fact that we're going to have to deal with for now. So I try not to panic too much when it comes to pop counts. Yes, it does. I'm aware of it. It has to play a factor. But when you think about our hobby, hockey cards, the NHL pop counts are nowhere near the other sports. And that is like, they're ridiculous. I think some of us, our jaws would drop if you pay attention to them. And if you do, you'll know. But our pop counts at 3,000 are almost still laughable. That's like still rare in some of the other sports. So it's about perspective. But I'm buying. I think he's still got years ahead of him. He's still going to be, how old is he now? 25? 26?
26 or 7, I think.
26.
Yeah.
Oh, is he? Okay. So he's still got some time left, and I think it'll prove positive. But yeah, I'd jump in, and like you said in some of the other examples, maybe not as young guns, maybe some of the other ones, the Seismic Golds or some other card that you can get in on it, but it's certainly not going to be super low. You just have to find the right value.
Okay, next, and we're going to stick with the Russians here. Next guy I put on the list was Ilya Sorokin. I'm actually a seller, which for a very particular reason. It's not because I don't like him as a player. I actually think he's one of the most exciting young goalies. The reason why I'm a seller is they're going to make the playoffs, it looks like, the Islanders. And the Eastern Conference is pretty loaded with some very top-end teams. So despite how good Sorokin is, I can't imagine them going very far in the playoffs. And so my mindset on Sorokin, unless it's like a hard to replace like PC piece that you're not going to be able to get back, but if it's a more common card like a Young Guns or a high numbered parallel or something like that, I think I'm selling right before the playoffs, knowing that there's going to be that playoff buzz. And then I'm probably buying back this summer after. And, if it's a card that is readily available and it's worth $200 and it spikes to 230 or 240 right before the playoffs, and you can cash in on that and then buy it back for 180 a couple months later. To me, that's how I fund a lot of my collection, is by kind of trying to make those kind of smart buy, sell decisions like that. And I'll sell a lot of cards and I'm like, well, it's buy for now, but I'll see you in a couple months when does it work perfectly every time? No, you can get snake bit in a few occasions, but I think over the long run, that's been a good strategy for me. And so it's really more about his team that I'm concerned about rather than the player. In this case, I just don't think they have enough to make any noise in the playoffs. But where are you with Sorokin?
Same way. I'm selling with very similar things, which I think I'm enjoying the most about this part of this segment is knowing that we wrote these and put these at the different time frames and coming up with similar viewpoints on the reasoning behind it. So yeah, for me, it's the same case. I'd be selling because it's a scenario of like, well, let's strike while the iron is hot, or at least somewhat hot. I believe he's getting the love this season that Shesterkin and Ottinger got last season, and deservedly so. I think he's going to continue to get better, but like for you, I don't know if I quite have the confidence in the Islanders to surround him with a team in front of him to take advantage of his talent to his full potential. In doing my research, the Islanders have the 12th most goals for in the Eastern Conference playoff eligible teams out of 16. That's they're a decent team, but I think they peaked couple seasons ago with Barry Trotz at the helm and their run for the couple seasons ago. He's played in the third most games this season, 56, and that's behind Hellebuck and Saros, yet he's 9th in wins. So that's third most games and 9th overall in wins in the research I was doing. But he has the third best goals against average. So what that picture that paints for me of a goalie playing great, but he's still ending up with more losses than he should actually have. And that's because of the product that's playing in front of him. They're not scoring enough to get a win. I don't know how many games they're losing by 1 goal, but that's the confidence level that I don't have is not in the team in front of him. So that's why I would be selling, just to kind of make the profit while he's playing well and getting that playoff push, that playoff buzz. And we'll see what happens with him. So I think he's got the talent. It's just the confidence in the team for there is not there for me. And I would get concerned with goalies. I feel bad. They just don't get the love that I think that they deserve. They're a little volatile sometimes.
Well, it's really team dependent too. You think of going back to, we were talking about Trevor Zegras earlier. If he had 55 goals this year and the team had the same record, his cards would be off the charts.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. But it wouldn't matter that his team stinks. But when you got a guy like Sorokin, where you're just talking about, where there's almost inconsistency in what his stats are with what you think his record should be, because it's indicative of the team that is playing in front of him.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next guy is Matty Beniers. I'm actually, I'm selling Beniers. And it doesn't mean that I don't think he's going to be a star or a superstar in the league. It's just when I look at at this point and what he's produced, particularly this year, can you confidently say he's going to be the next Kaprizov or J-Rob or Jack Hughes or even Cole Caulfield? I mean, he's got 21 goals, 31 assists for 52 points and 73 games played. It's not bad. It's not horrible. It's just not great. So at his current point total, Neil, puts him, it's the 203rd most points by a rookie in a rookie season. That doesn't inspire a lot of 200, and that's in NHL history.
Yeah.
His 21 goals is in 282nd in NHL history.
Okay.
And again, it's 1 year. It doesn't mean everything, but this is more, are you buying, selling, holding right now?
Oh, okay.
And I just haven't seen enough this year, and particularly in the last few months, where it seems like he's been so quiet. Where I'm on the Beniers train, so I'm selling and maybe buying back this summer a little bit when prices dip. But I guess that's where I'm at. Where are you on with Beniers?
This is the first one that we have had differing opinions on? I think maybe. So I'm buying. This is fun. I'm buying. And it's great. If there's any proof that we didn't compare notes, this is it. So I'm glad you mentioned the players you did. So this is one where it's another past tense scenario for me. I did pick up a Beniers card this year, but full disclosure to the podcast listening world, I am a Michigan fan, so that played a factor in my decision as well prior to now. But you mentioned some of those key players. I'm going to mention players to you as well. His rookie season this year, he's already had better rookie season than Caulfield, Stützle, Suzuki, and he's got more points this season than Jack Hughes had in his first 2 seasons. He's currently at the same total points that Kirill had in his rookie season with 51 points. So I think that, this is that scenario of what have you done for me lately? I think we get caught up, these players that are hot names like now, Hughes, Caulfield, Stützle, we're thinking about it today, but back a couple of years ago when they were rookies, their numbers were same area where Caulfield or where Beniers is. I think one area that might hurt him is how well Seattle's playing right now. Yeah. As ironic as that sounds, with them in the playoff hunt, let's face it, that's going to lower the draft pick that they're going to end up getting. I'm not saying that it's a must-have, that they need to get better draft picks, but to a team like the Kraken, they could really bolster their roster with, more high-end prospect players. So that'll help them. So it's a little double-edged sword with the Kraken being in the playoff hunt. So yeah, I'm in. Okay. I'll take your Beniers from you. How much you want? So yeah.
Well, now that I know you're so high on them, I might have to raise my price. No, I'm just kidding.
20%.
I think that's a really good counterpoint. And it just goes to say there's no right or wrong answer here. And
correct.
To me, it's more the reasoning that I really appreciate, and it gives me stuff to think about too. So, guy we've already both mentioned is our next guy, and that's Cole Caulfield, who I'm a buyer. But again, here's my typical qualifier. I'm waiting for the offseason dip. I don't see any reason to buy him right now. He's been out for a couple months. The team's terrible. They're not making the playoffs. We know that if you buy today for 100, it's going to be 80 in the middle of July anyways. So I'm just going to wait. The other reason why, and not just from an offseason dip perspective, why I want to wait is before I go in further on Cole Caulfield, who I am pretty high on, I'll get to that in a minute. I want to take a little bit more time to see how this rehab is going and just make sure that it's not going to be kind of like a Josh Norris lingering situation, because it would stink to buy in right now and then have him re-injure the shoulder 3 games into next year and miss another 6 months or to a season. There's always that risk, of course, but we want to try to avoid that. All that being said, though, prior to him being injured, he was having a great year and he was taking that big step that we always, like you've mentioned before, what have you done for me lately, right? In that second year that we want a player to take, and he's in a great team with a huge fan base in Montreal that's got a huge following. He's kind of the guy that everyone seems to have anointed as sort of, unless they end up with Bedard, then he goes to Draisaitl mode there. But yeah, I'm just a big fan. I think it sucks that he got injured. Assuming he recovers well and on a great path and ready to go for next season, from a buying in perspective, it creates an opportunity to do that at a much lower price.
So I'm buying, and I'm probably using the same thing. I've thought about the off-season dip, and yeah, that would be a good time. I mean, I hate to say it, as far as that was a thought that popped in my head when I heard he was injured and it was done for the season. It was one of those things that initially popped in my head. So yeah, it's one of those scenarios where, you hate benefiting or trying to benefit from an unfortunate situation, but this is an opportunity to utilize and play smart, because that's what we're doing. If the value dips while he's out and during the off season, then that's what you should do. That's when you're going to look to dip your toes into the pool of investing, because in 46 games, he was playing well. He had 36 points, and that's just 7 points fewer than his best season. So he was on pace to do well, and where he played 21 more games. He was only 7 points away. So he was well on his way to advancing, I feel. And you like to see those assists up in him for him, get a little more than 10. But they're a very, very, very young team, and they've got some talented players and prospects on their roster. Much like the Sabres, they're going to get higher draft picks, and you just see that gelling start to happen. And with them being out of the playoffs and near the bottom of the league, there's a shot they're going to get like a top 3, top 6 pick to add to their roster, which is going to help guys like Caulfield, Suzuki, Yaroslav's Slavkovsky, yeah. You want to see that, and to surround him on a player like Caulfield with more talent is going to help. And yeah, you want to pay attention to what his long-term return is going to be. But yeah, I'll buy. I'm
okay.
in.
So our last one is a favorite to debate. It's Mr. Steven Stamkos, who we've talked about a lot on our show, and I'm a buyer, but it's for a long-term hold. I don't see any scenario at this point where it's been long enough. The hobby views Stamkos how they do, for whatever reason that is, and he's already won cups. He's already won Rocket Richard trophies, so it's not like if they make a run in the playoffs, we're going to see a huge wake up at this point. But I do believe, though, over the long term, that the hobby appreciation will grow. That's what I'm betting on when it comes to Stamkos. And so if I can get a really nice card, and I plan to have it for 10 years, kind of because I like it and I want to enjoy it and I want to have it in my PC, I think that it's one that certainly probably wouldn't go down in value, but has a good chance to grow too. And there's just something about this whole Tampa team where all these guys we never use the term undervalued, because the value is whatever the market says it is. So everyone's properly valued. Mm-hmm. But it's more that underappreciated thing. And won't go in the whole bio, but he's 1,000-point guy in less than 1,000 games. He's got more than 500 goals, 2 cups, 2 Rocket Richards, and his 2008 Young Guns PSA 10 with a pop of 390. So really low, right? Compared to Kaprizov at 3,400 at this point. It's $350. It makes no sense. There's no where that logic or math adds up. And so I'm just betting over time, Neil, that the hobby catches up, his values catch up to where his prominence should be in the game.
Yeah,
what do you think?
I agree. But I agree on that with him. But for me, I think I'm of this mindset that I would sell unless I was looking for that long-term hold, or unless he was part of my PC. At this point, I don't know what else more he can do to have his card value rise or fall. Call him like the Rodney Dangerfield of the NHL. Like, Stamkos just gets no respect.
Yeah.
And as you guys have discussed plenty of times before, I'm not sure what this guy's got to do to get the recognition that he deserves. I mean, all the things that you talked about, he's a champion. He's got 500 goals. He's, a Rocket Richard winner. Like, what more, what do you want from me? But I think part of it, when I dug in, was looking at it, like some of his, maybe there's a misconception, because maybe a third of his career, so 5 of his 15 seasons, he's been injured playing less than 57 games.
Yeah.
So that might factor into what the value is. And maybe people just think, all right, is he still playing? Is he not injured? Oh, wait, okay, that's nice for him. And possibly, maybe it's due to him having one season over 100 points, and that was last year. That was shocking to me as well. So while he does well, and he's Stamkos is a guy that scores, he hasn't popped off. He hasn't gone and hit that mega 100-plus point season for multiple years. He's been really good, but he had 1 year. That surprised me. If his hobby needle hasn't gone to elite by now, I'm not sure it will go much higher than where it is today when he's 33. Like you said, his Young Guns, where the value is at 350, which is very close to its all-time low from looking at Card Ladder. And unfortunately, for everybody, Father Time is undefeated. So it's not like he's got time on his side to help change his value back to where it once was. So it might be where it's at. And if you're doing it for an investment, like you said, for your point to maybe the hobby will eventually recognize him. I'm not sure if that I'm afraid that won't happen if people will just remember him for what he was. Maybe they'll look back on him fondly. I hope so, because he's an important player in the history of the NHL. So, but that's why I would probably sell, because I'm not sure how much lower it's going to go, and I don't see it being able to spike back up.
Very fair point. Yeah, it's hard to argue. Well, to me, that was fun going back and looking at some buy, sell, hold. We'll probably do that again in the future. Want to roll in now to some hobby news and give some quick updates. There's some milestones for the season that have passed this week that wanted to bring up, Neil. So both David Pastrnak and Matthew Tkachuk crossed the 100-point mark for the season. That gives us now 5 players this year with a few games left that have reached 100-plus points. We have a big group that is kind of in the hunt for it. And I just looked at guys with like 95 points or better. And that's, you have Erik Karlsson, Mitch Marner, Elias Pettersson, Nathan McKinnon, Nugent Hopkins, who we've talked about, and Jason Robertson all have at least 95 points. So there's a good shot we'll have a couple more get the 100-point threshold. We had 8 players last year reach 100 points. So last year was McDavid, Draisaitl, Tkachuk are the only 3 from last year that have reached 100 points again this year. So those are guys that have demonstrated consistency to cross that important threshold. Looking at goals, we have, as of right now, McDavid, Pasta, and Draisaitl are the only players that have 50 or more goals this year. McDavid has 62, Pasta has 54, Draisaitl has 50. Mikko Rantanen's at 49, so there's a better than good chance that he'll get there. You have Braden Point, who not a lot of, again, another Tampa guy that gets almost no love, is at 48. So he has a good shot at 52. Last year, we had 4 50-plus goal scorers. Matthews led the league with 60. Draisaitl, Chris Kreider, and Ovechkin both had over 50. So only Draisaitl will have back-to-back seasons with 50 goals this year. Scoring looks pretty much, when you look at like the top of the scoring, it's pretty close to last year. It seems like we'll end up about the same amount of guys with 50 or more goals and the same amount of players with 100 points. So. And we're going to do a whole bunch of comprehensive recaps this year and hobby breakdowns and kind of getting into all these, but just wanted to make people aware there. We did have a pretty important record that was eclipsed this weekend where Jason Robertson, who is only 23, and I think we forget that a lot about when we talk about J-Rob, and he's a budding superstar, just broke the Dallas Stars franchise single-season points record on Friday night. Had a huge game against Arizona Coyotes with a goal and 3 assists, giving him 95 points on the season. So he's one of those guys that's chasing 100. The previous franchise record owner was Mike Modano, who had 93 points in back-to-back seasons in 92, 93, and 93, 94 for the Minnesota North Stars. So this honestly bugs me a little bit because our team was stolen from us. And to call like the Dallas franchise record, no offense to Dallas fans, it's not your fault, but come on. It's the North Stars. Modano played for the North Stars. Anywho, it's been a big breakthrough season for J-Rob. Yeah. He is having a career year, and you look at like who is it you talked about? Like Tage Thompson with progression, right? Goals 17 year 1, 41 year 2, now 42 plus year 3. Love to see that. Points 45, 79, and 95 plus. That's big time growth. Are you a fan of Robertson, or do you appreciate kind of what he's doing? Where do you stand on him?
It's become an appreciation because, with being on the East Coast and they're, central, if I don't misquote me, but don't get too many of their games. So I do watch when they play the Flyers and my team. So I've learned how to watch and pay attention to him. And obviously with his hobby hype that he's had, it's definitely one of those guys like, oh, okay, now I can pay attention to, this guy. And it's nice watching him play, get a better appreciation for him. So, like I said, never want to see somebody do poorly and enjoy watching him play. That's for sure.
When we talk about market, given what he's produced, if he was in New York or in Toronto or the Canadians, I think his hobby hype would be off the charts right now.
Agree.
He's a huge, exciting young player. And looking at his card, so he's a 2020 Young Gun, of course, Series 1. So his PSA 10 is pop 809, but only a 39% gem rate. So that's going to keep that a little bit more under control than you get with guys like Kaprizov, who are like upper 60% as Robertson's career begins to grow. It is down about 8% in the past month. I don't know why exactly. It's in the 240 range. his PSA, one thing you might look at is PSA pop is increasing. I look back at the beginning of December when he kind of really caught fire, and his PSA 10 pop count at that point, I think, was 385. And so at 809, it's more than doubled since then. And maybe that's giving people some pop.
Yeah.
Okay. Now this is the dogfight. This is the part of the show we've been most looking forward to. So this is where our collegiate passions will collide a little bit. The Hobie Baker finalists were just announced, I think, on Friday. So if you don't know, the Hobie Baker Award is given annually to the men's best NCAA hockey player. There's 3 finalists this year that are all playing in the Frozen Four, which is kind of cool. So we'll find them, all 3 of them will get to see play next weekend, right? Is that when the...
Yep. Yes.
So the first one is Logan Cooley, who is the 3rd overall pick in the 2022 NHL entry draft. He's a freshman at the University of Minnesota for the Golden Gophers. Cooley has 20 goals, 37 assists for 57 points and 37 games played. And Neil, I can probably haven't watched a ton of Gophers, but I can tell you from watching this guy play all year, he's super good. And he's going to be a very, very good NHL player. I think, too, that after the Gophers win the national championship in a week or so here, that he'll probably be making his, I don't know if he'll have time now to make his debut at Mullet for Arizona, so I might have to wait till next year. But he'll be in the NHL next year. Have you watched Cooley play much?
No, not much. Unfortunately, I don't get a lot of them, but I did watch the last couple games. He was actually a player when last year's draft that I was hoping was going to drop to my guys. So I knew of him then. So it was one of those things when he went earlier that it was unfortunate, but I follow him a little bit.
Okay. So the only thing better than having a Golden Gopher be a Hobie Baker finalist is having 2 Golden Gophers as your Hobie Baker finalist. And the next one is painful. Matthew Nyes, who is the other finalist. He's a sophomore at the University of Minnesota. So we'll row the boat. Ski-U-Mah, go Gophers to them there. On the season, Nyes has 21 goals, 20 assists for 41 points and 38 games played. He is a Maple Leafs prospect. He was the 57th overall pick in the 2021 NHL entry draft. And I was trying to read a bunch of articles. It's kind of like when they plan on signing him. I think they tried to sign him last year, but he thought he needed more time. And so he rebuffed their offers there. But he's another guy after the Gophers win the national championship that I could see playing in the NHL. I'm not sure they bring him up for the playoffs, but maybe next year. Then we get to the presumptive, I think, number 2 pick in this upcoming NHL draft, Adam Fantilli. He plays for the evil blue school in Michigan that nobody likes. And he is a tremendous, tremendous young talent. On the season, he's got an impressive 29 goals, 35 assists, and 35 games played. That's a lot of points. Like I said, if there wasn't Connor Bedard, he might be a real strong contender to be the number 1 pick in the draft this summer. He's got talent everywhere on the ice. And I suppose other than showing questionable decision-making in what college he chooses to go to, that's probably about the only knock you could have on him. But as a Michigan fan, so I'll turn it over to you here and excuse my ribbing on your team a little bit as a competitor to the Gophers, but you must have seen Fantilli play quite a bit to this point. What's your scouting report?
Yeah, he's an exciting player to watch. I mean, just watching the last couple of games, especially, and him coming into his own this season, people are going to forget, his age. He's a very young player, and he's going to be. It's going to be fun to just somebody's going to settle for a guy like this, which is going to get lost in this year's draft. When you've got to settle for a player with this type of pedigree that Fantilli has, that I'll be honest, if my favorite team got a guy like him and missed out on Bedard, I'll be all right with it in the long term. And I hope for his sake, this might help take some of the pressure off him.
Yeah.
Very, very impressive player. It's all the pressure is going to be on somebody else's shoulders. So he's going to make a run for it for the Frozen Four here. And when Michigan is winning the national championship this year, definitely going to make himself a name for being the guy that is who drafted after Bedard this coming season.
We just had a few audio problems a second ago. It sounded like it said Michigan was going to win the national championship game.
Little verb come up, like a little vibe, like
reverb there. We'll edit that out in post. No, I'm just kidding. And actually, I want to take a second here to I rib on Michigan a little bit, but if you're not from Minnesota, you might not know that for many, many years, decades even, to get a ticket at Mariucci Arena to watch the Golden Gophers was the hardest ticket to get in Minnesota. I went to school at the University of Minnesota, and we would wait all night for season tickets in line to try to, back in the mid 90s, to try to get tickets to our team so we could go to Gopher games. What ended up happening is the Gophers were in the WCHA for the longest time and had decades-long rivalries with the University of North Dakota and St. Cloud State and Duluth, Minnesota Duluth, and the Denver, Colorado teams, University of Denver, Denver College. And because of football money and the Big Ten Network, it forced the Gophers to move into the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And it killed all interest in Gopher hockey.
Really?
Oh, it killed it. People were so mad and so bitter. It's been the easiest ticket to get over the last 5 years. It's unheard of where you would go to a game at Mariucci and there would be half empty seats.
Wow.
It really was a negative impact on the program. So I think having these budding rivalries with a school like Michigan has been a good thing for Gopher hockey to get people interest, because all of our important rivalries and games were gone.
Yeah, that would have an effect on anybody
with that move. So it is good from that perspective. Okay, we need to roll on into new product releases. So Neil, we got Upper Deck Series 2 coming out in a couple days, 2022-23. Resale pricing still at $120 last time I checked.
Yeah.
That's so high to me. I just don't understand given the checklist. And, I know Troy and I talked about this a little bit last show, but I'd just love to get your perspective. Am I alone in thinking that it's just too high and it's...
I share the same sentiment there. I mean, I think you pay that much in a hobby shop for it, maybe where there's somebody's got to make a return on it. But when you're buying it online for yourself, it should be a little less. Maybe it's helping us prepare for sticker shock. I don't know. I don't want to, put it down the road, but costs going up. I see that in my business that I work at all the time, and they're no different. So it is what it is. I mean, we'll roll with this. It's not going to stop me from getting a box. That's for sure. Yeah.
Are you a big flagship buyer? Like, do you typically buy at least a box or two or a few to kind of open and see what you get out of it?
Yeah, since the coming back, that's flagship is the product that I'm probably most drawn to, and have been even prior when I collected before. Like I loved Upper Deck since they hit the hobby. I mean, I was collecting back when they first came out, so that might be my slight bias because of my hobby sabbatical. That a lot of these newer series like SP and Allure and Artifacts, Trilogy, all those cards they didn't exist when I was collecting before. So, and I credit the Upper Deck with changing the way cards looked. With their great action shots and colors and their appealing design. So guilty as charged. Call me an Upper Deck fanboy, but yeah, I'm in on flagship every year.
Anyone you're looking forward to, like anyone on the Young Guns checklist that's catching your eye? Do you have any who's going to be the big chase in your opinion?
I think it's for me. I think it's going to be Kuzmenko, and I don't even think it's going to be close as far as the checklist. They're nice players. Don't get me wrong. Jack Eye's on there. I forget who else was on there. I don't have it in front of me, but
I think Wyatt Johnston,
Wyatt Johnston's going to be on there. Yeah, nice players, fun players. But I think Kuzmenko, with his not having a card out there yet, and this being, again, another player coming in his mid-20s to NHL, I think that'll probably be the chase card, and it's the one that I'm probably going to look forward to trying to get myself. Hope for.
You're not as scared away by his age at 27?
Yes and no. I mean, it's just he's a talented player, and I like talented players. And if he's 27, great. Maybe he's a quick flip. And a couple of years down the road, doing the sell, hold, buy, maybe it'll be a sell. But I think he's just an exciting player that I want to see more of from Vancouver.
Now, as a Philly super fan, how are you handling Bowie getting a Young Gun? Is he a threat to the gritty mascot domination, or you comfortable with another weird kind of crazy, strange, but irresistible mascot entering the NHL here?
I agree. I think it's fun. I think it's fun that the NHL does the mascot Young Guns, but the one thing that you failed to mention, not only is he kind of competing with the deranged thing, he's the only mascot to appear since Gritty's debut. So we haven't had that. So it's just by default, he's going to compete. But I don't believe that Bowie, and maybe it's just me being way over here on the East Coast, but I don't know if he got the national media attention like Gritty got.
Yeah, I don't think so.
As a Flyers fan, I was just in awe, like that the national attention. I mean, Good Morning America, Time Magazine, Conan O'Brien, like it was so weird and foreign to me. I'll be honest, I was not a Gritty fan when he first came out, and like, which was what a lot of people's problem was. Something my friends still tease me about to this day. I do not own a Gritty Young Guns card, but I had my own personal problems with him because of the way his antics were taking the focus off of things like the kids. I'm pretty sure they would have it in Minnesota that during the intermissions in games, in between periods, they have the mites on ice.
Yeah.
The little kids come out and play a little 5-minute thing. Well, when Gritty first came out, this has been my problem, is he was kind of knocking kids over and being out there with them. And to me, having been a hockey player as a kid, that just kind of got me angry at him. I'm like, dude, let these kids have have their moment,
Oh, it's the biggest moment in their life, and
don't make it about you. So I was very anti-Gritty to begin with, and I will be honest though, I am warming up. So I'm kind of taking away some of my friends' power over me, teasing. I think that he and I are in an okay place. Let's just put it this way. I still haven't been photographed with him yet, and not sure that'll happen. But so yeah, warming up to him. But I still, if I were to go Gritty against Bowie, I'm Team Gritty.
All right. Okay, so now aside from Young Guns on the checklist, are there any inserts that you're looking forward to in Series 2 that you like or stand out to you? Yeah,
I like the pop count cards. You guys have talked about it before. I think it's just a cool design, and it's funny. It's so basic, like that. It's so unique. Like, why didn't somebody think of that yet? Design a card that looks like a slab. Is staring at everybody right in the face, and it, like I heard before, like that having that numbered rarity without having to do the numbering on the cards is really cool as well. That was a pretty smart decision on Upper Deck's part. So yeah, the pop count card I like, and I'm also oddly interested in the Lunchbox Legends. I think they're cool. I used to have my Lunchbox.
Oh yeah.
I think I still found one in my basement the other day, which was pretty funny. My Indiana Jones Lunchbox. So. Yeah, I think that's cool. I'm excited for those. I think those are
probably the ones that could be valuable. You should look that up on eBay.
Trust me, I was looking it up. So that Lunchbox Legends cards does hit me in the nostalgic feels. So
that's awesome.
I think those are probably ones I hope to get.
Okay, so I got to take a really quick opportunity going back to Series 1, but to have a Flyers fan on. So there's a bunch of Young Guns in Series 1. A couple notable Minnesota guys too. So you have Bobby Brink from Troy's Minnetonka High School. What's just your honest, is he one to look out for, or does he just kind of seem like he's just going to be maybe a average player?
From what I've seen promise. He's one I'm very, very optimistic about. After especially what he did in the playoffs for last season for the college tournament. So he's a guy I'm looking forward to. I got one of his cards and was excited to get. So yeah, I like him.
What about, and then there's the Stillwater kid, Noah Cates. Are you high on him? Or
Noah Cates seems to have found his place on the roster permanently. Brink has not come up much, but Cates and his brother Jackson, they're both promising. And earlier this season, in the preseason this year, those two guys were the ones that were getting the most local attention from the coaches. And I think they both had the best training camps prior to this season. So they're getting what they deserve being up there, and I hope they stay. I hope they come up and stay.
Good feedback. Okay, so the next release looks like it's going to be 21-22 SP Authentics. We'll have new Future Watch autos coming from the 2021 class. So we're talking like Cole Caulfield, Trevor Zegras, Troy's guy Mo Sider, and just in time for the Expo. Are you a SP Authentic fan? Do you like Future Watch autos? Is this something you might buy, or is it something you typically stay away from?
I like them. I like the look of SP Authentic. They weren't there when I was in the hobby before. They're just a very clean, crisp card with that white background and very eye appealing to me. So yeah, I grab them here and there. I only probably do the Future Watch autos of my guys that I get. Yeah. So yeah, that's where I'm at with those. But they're really nice looking cards.
You going to try to get any of the SP Legends Future Watch autos for your Flyer guys, the Bobby Clark or Lindros, or are those on your list?
I've had a few. I have my eyes on a few of them. Like the acetate ones look really nice. I missed out on one the other day. I forgot the time when auction ended, so I think we've all been there.
Oh yeah.
So it's just a nice product. That Legends set, the Legends air quotes to some of the players. But yeah, they look really nice. I like them.
Okay, so for our last segment for today's show, wanted to do a quick kind of social recap and look at some of our posts over the last couple of days that highlight the hockey hobby market in March and some of sort of the key statistics we're pulling out of there for the month. We always do a top 25 players that sold the most cards for every month. And so we did that for March. We saw an overall increase in cards sold for the top players in March, which is kind of interesting. If you want to check out our Instagram and see the post, it's called Who's Hot and kind of like a fiery design. You can see the whole list of top 25. I'll just go through mainly the top 10 and kind of the biggest risers in the list and fallers in the list. So our top 10 players who sold the most cards last month, Neil, are Wayne Gretzky at 4,612 cards, which always number one, but a big jump up from, I think, more than 1,000 cards more than the previous month. You had McDavid. We were talking about Braden Holtby at 299 wins. You had McDavid at 2,999 cards sold. So one shy of 3,000. One more. You had Ovi third with 1,837 cards sold, followed by Crosby fourth with 1,414 cards sold. Then Mario Lemieux, 1,409 cards sold. Sixth is Patrick Waugh, 1,332 cards sold. Kaprizov comes in at number 7 with 1,260 cards sold. Yager, number 8 at 1,007 cards sold. Cole Caulfield, still hanging in there.
Yep.
And number 9 at 978 cards sold. And then Connor Bedard, the 10th most cards sold of any hockey player last month at 916. So one of the things that, as a guy that does this every month, that you can really see the impact of the SP Legends set here in that we have a number of guys that like Patrick Waugh, Mario Lemieux, even Gretzky that have seen. I attribute a lot of that to people that are just buying cards from that set. It gives nice new. Sorry to jump in. It gives nice new product to jump in on some of these legend players. And I don't know. Don't sell yourself short, guys. I mean, in the month of March, you guys had episodes 66 and 68, right, of the Hockey Cards Gongshow. Yeah, we did.
I think when you talked about them, it got the people's interest flowing again. So don't sell yourself short.
Yeah, we'll see. I doubt that, but I'd love to think that. I would actually love to think that. The biggest gainer for the month of March was Jaromir Jagr, who moved up 7 spots from 15 in February to number 8 in March. Biggest faller was Jack Hughes, who fell 8 spots from 11 to 19. New additions into the top 25 for March, who were not in February's top 25, were Marty Brodeur, who landed at number 20 with 650 cards sold, Jeremy Swayman, who landed at number 24 with 566, and eking into the top 25 was Pavel Bure, who landed 25th with 537 cards sold. What I'm excited about doing these two is we're now accumulating data, Neil. So I think of like a year from now when we'll have a bunch of cool things to look at, like trends and how card sales for particular players are moving. We also reported on the total Young Guns sold in March. So each month we do a Young Gun sales recap, again, using Card Ladder sales history data. It's on our Instagram. You can go find it there. In the month of March, there was 17,922 Young Guns purchased on secondary markets. In February, the Young Gun sales were 17,408. So just a 500 total increase from 17,408 to 17,922. It was, though, 4,519 less Young Guns sold than a year ago in March in 2022. So quite a bit less year over year. There is a pretty smoking gun, I guess call it reason why. So last year in March, on March 2nd, I believe, Series 1 came out for Upper Deck, given their whole pandemic. Right. So a lot of people were jumping in. It was really late, and I think really bolstered the Young Gun sales for that month. One thing, though, that you might look at as an area of concern if you're following the market is not only do we look at the total Young Gun sold compared to last month and then compared to the year prior, we also look at what are the average Young Guns sold per day. And so in February, we had 622 Young Guns sold per day, and that dropped to 578 in March. About a 7% month over month decrease. As far as reasons, I don't know. It's been a long time now since Series 1 came out, and maybe it just says the market is fatigued and ready for some new blood. You could look at the last two classes, and we've mentioned this throughout today's conversations, where it's been I don't know what the correct word is to describe but mediocre. Not horrible, not great, but not super exciting either. So maybe that's playing a factor. And of course, we're in a soft economy, and there's been a whole bunch of uncertainty around the sports card market, and that could factor too. If you had to guess of those reasons, where would you why people are buying less Young Guns per day than a month
I think
ago?
it's because they're spending their dollars on other things. The factor in how many Upper Deck's playing catch up, so we're spending our money on a lot of other new products out there. So I think their dollars are stretched. Like you said, how long ago did Upper Deck UD1 come out? Well, it came out, and then there's so many other things that we're putting our money on. So maybe it's not Young Guns, and I think everybody's already like, well, on the horizon is UD2, so I'm just going to wait for that. So there's a lot of product out there which is absorbing people's dollars.
Yes, and then you would think that, well, with UD2 coming out in the beginning of April, we should expect to see probably pretty strong sales for Young Guns in April, even though there's not a huge chase in this class. There's some good players like Kuzmenko, but there's not a guy that people are going to be lining up to get. We'll get that soon enough with Connor Bedard.
I agree.
Last thing we looked at is the top 5 hockey card sales for the month of March. Again, on our Instagram, so you can go check this out there. So the number one, well, I'll calm down. So the number 5 selling card, which I love to see, it's one of my favorite cards of all time, was the 1971 OPC Guy Lafleur PSA 10, which is a very small population of 6. It sold for $28,800 via Golden. All-time high was $31,800 this past August. So a little bit of a decrease, but not maybe 3% or 7-8%, something like that. Number 4 sale is an Ovechkin. It's his 2005-6 SP Authentic Future Watch Auto out of $9.99, BGS 10, so pristine, great on the card, and 10 great on the auto. Sold for $34,800 via Golden. It is a record sale for the BGS 1010 grade. Previous high was $24,000 set in 2021. Pretty big increase there, going from $24,000 to $34,800 US. All-time high, Neil, for any grade of this card is $43,200 US for a PSA 10 that was set in December 2021. So here's my question to you on this card. How hard would it be for you to spend $30,000, $40,000 on a card that's numbered out of 999?
That's pretty difficult. It's not terribly rare, so I don't know if it's not my. First of all, it's not my wheelhouse. But if I were to be handed that money, what would I buy it on? I don't know if it would be a card with 998 others out there.
It'd be a little bit of a tough one for me.
Yeah.
The number 3 card is a 1979 Topps Wayne Gretzky PSA 9, top 128. It sold for $43,200. It actually sold twice in this past month in March for that exact same amount. Once in the PWCC Weekly and once in the PWCC Premier. All-time high for this one is $93,480. So we can tease Troy for spending $700 on a Kaprizov and it going down to $250. But to drop $94,000 or $93,000 plus on a card and then have it lose half its value, that would hurt.
And that whoever bought that Gretzky, it wasn't me. I'm just going to put it that way. That one wasn't me.
You did buy a Gretzky though in the past year, right? A Gretzky rookie.
I did, and it was the Topps rookie. I bought one at National.
Oh, nice.
I got a PSA 7, so it's not far off, but it's still the value's not anywhere near that.
Still an awesome card. Must have been a great feeling.
It felt so good to get that card because I chased it as a kid and oogled over it in the Beckett monthly magazines every single month. So yeah, that was a great pickup. I love it.
The number 2 card is a pretty special one. It's a 2005-6 Alex Ovechkin Young Gun. They were high gloss were HG glossy back then. So it's out of 10. It's a BGS 9. I think it's 8 out of 10, so it'd be the jersey match card. It sold for $54,000 US via Golden. And comparing this to the Future Watch, although it's not auto, this is a card I would spend big money on, given that it's out of 10 and it's a jersey number, more so to me than the Future Watch auto.
Right.
It's a new all-time record sale at $54,000. For both the card and grade, it beat its previous high of $52,800, so not by much. That was set last May. Really, really kind of cool, special, nice card there. And the number 1 card is a 05-06 The Cup Ovechkin RPA out of 99. So true RPA. It's a BGS 910. It sold for $73,300 US via Golden. All-time high on this card is 105,780 set in October 2021. So 3 of the top 5 selling cards, Alex Ovechkin. I think we're just
Ovi. Yeah, there he is.
Ovi. Well, Neil,
yeah,
you did it. You have fun today? What's your thoughts about co-hosting the Gong Show?
I had a great time. It was fantastic. It was really, really enjoyable. And if you allow me a minute, I wanted to make a comment on behalf of the listeners, because I hope this isn't too presumptuous, but I do want to take a moment to be their voice, be somebody to say thank you to both of you for all that you guys do for the hockey card community. From your social media posts, you guys have daily content, and it's incredibly informative, and that takes time out of your guys' lives. Your analysis of all the data, visual content to support the data that you guys put out there, the videos with your opening up packs and boxes, and you guys share all this information just for the benefit of the hobby. And it's something that I think I'm grateful for, and I've learned to appreciate over the past year. And the podcast, let me just tell you something. Ever since you asked me to help out with this episode, I've had the unique opportunity to get a peek behind the Gong Show, behind the big giant gong, I had a peek behind there. And all I can say is just wow. Like the time and effort and energy that you guys put into these episodes twice a week, plus the recording time is just, it's amazing. So I don't know how you guys do it. I don't know when you sleep. I'm convinced you don't. And how you work it into your 9-to-5 jobs and family and sports and life in general is just kind of awe-inspiring and mind-blowing to me. So I suppose part of this listener thank you also needs to go to your very understanding families as well. On behalf of the listeners, the followers, your subscribers, I just would like to say a genuine thank you for everything that you and Troy do, because the hockey card community in the world is genuinely, it's a better place because of what you guys put into this hobby. So thank you from us.
Oh, thank you. That's really sweet. And really appreciate that, and appreciate your support, have appreciated everyone's support. You're right. When somebody says they like what you do, it puts a lot of juice in your batteries. And I think what you've observed, and we talked about this a little bit earlier today, but that it's a lot of work doing this podcast, and not trying to get any unnecessary kudos there. But I think it's important that people know that we understand that you're spending 2 hours plus listening to us twice a week. And so we take that responsibility really seriously. We want to make sure that we're maximizing the value of your time. And our whole goal with our show is to help people be more successful collectors.
Yeah.
Right. To give you, to get the collection you want, and to give you things to think about, or advice, or data points, or stupid rules, or anything to help you be, because typically what we found in collecting sports cards is you usually learn by wasting money. And spending $300 on, or $750 on a Kaprizov Young Guns when we didn't know what we were doing. Troy didn't know what he was doing. And then before being able to understand that there were indicators, like with his explosive pop count, that this was probably not a good bet. And it's never about the value determining how good a card is. It's about, if you love Kaprizov and you want a Young Guns, wait a few months.
Right.
And instead of paying $700, pay $350, and then you can have $350 more to buy a different card. That's kind of our whole mentality, and why we do the show.
Yeah, no, it's all about, making people smarter, and really for not a lot. You guys do it for the love of the game, for the love of the hobby. So, and minimizing others' mistakes or bringing up their learning curve is definitely something that's admirable. And that comes through, that you guys aren't promoting buy this card, don't buy that card. You helping people become smarter collectors, and that resonates to me. I saw through that early on, and it really means a lot. And yeah, I love what you guys do, and I'm gonna keep on following, and you'll always be lurking in the background. So I appreciate it. So thanks.
Well, we appreciate your friendship, and everyone too, because we have no money to pay ourselves or our co-host. Go give Neil at Irish Flyer Collector. Please go give him a follow on his Instagram. Anything else you want to plug quick before we go? Or is that the main thing?
That's plenty. No, that's plenty. Just, if you want to hop on, follow me on Instagram. I'd be happy to have people follow, and you'll get to see what I do, and I'll give a follow back. And I just enjoy the opportunity to share what I love in my collection. And that's what my page is all about. So
that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Okay. If you like the episode, please leave a rating review on Apple, Spotify, whatever podcast app you listen to us on. If you love the show, and heck, Neil was on it today, so how could you not? And want to chat with us on the Hockey Cards Gongshow Discord server on a daily basis, please consider a $5 a month donation. Join our out of 99 support level tier on Patreon. The link is in the show description for the podcast app you're listening to us on. You can go to our website, hockeycardsgongshow.com, and click on the Become a Patron button there. Or you can go to the Patreon website at patreon.com and search for Hockey Cards Gongshow. And finally, in our Instagram profile or TikTok profile in our link tree, there's a link there. If you're not following us on social media, we're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. And Neil, the Hockey Cards Gongshow podcast is a production of Dollar Box Ventures LLC. We'll see you all on Thursday, and have a good start to your week.